All right, good morning. We're going to get started. I know folks are still joining the Zoom and trickling in here to the office. You are here for the Making CDBG Work, Leveraging New York State CDBG for Community Development Success. This is a joint event with the Environmental Finance Center and Homes and Community Renewal. So I want to take a minute to welcome you. Thank you for registering for this training. This is the first time that Charlie and I have held this training together. My name is Jess Eckerlin. I'm a program assistant here at the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. For those of you who are attending in person, just a couple of housekeeping items. One, this is mainly a research and development facilities. So the exterior doors to the building will remain locked throughout the day. If you do need to go out and come back in, you can see me. You met Kristen at registration, and you should have met Callista and Tess downstairs. So just see one of us and we'll let you back in. Restrooms are through those doors, past the staircase, and then you'll see them on your left. I think that's all we have for that. For our virtual attendees, I know we've been doing Zoom for several years now, but just a quick refresher, you will have the ability to mute and unmute yourself during today's presentation to ask questions. That will be during designated times when you will be invited to do so. Please leave your cameras off. Please type questions into the chat box. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact my colleague, Owen Volk. He'll be managing the chat as well as all the Zoom today. And if you need assistance, you can raise your hand and we will call on you. All right, so now, Charlie, you want to introduce yourself quickly? Yes.
The Community Renewal Program Director, but colleague Scott Mountain. It's also one of the other program directors. They be here and they be working with you guys again. And hopefully, I don't bore you guys to death by the end of the 4 hours, but I think it's a pretty good session that just I put together. So hopefully, it's good information. I'm kind of treating this kind of like a boot camp, CDBG boot camp. So today I enjoyed.
Yeah, so now you've met both of us and we want to learn a little bit more about you. So we have crafted this Mentimeter poll. You can use your iPhone or your smartphone to scan that QR code. It will bring up a series of questions. The Menti code is here at 72795104. Yep. You can also go to mentimeter.com on your computer and enter in that Menti code. We'll give folks a few minutes to do that. Up to 46 on. So as folks are. All right, so far, Charlie, we have you applied for CDBG funding in the past? We have 26 respondents that said yes, and they were successful. 12 said no, And one said yes, but they did not receive the funding. Hey, we were having a slight technical difficulty with the presentation. We got folks to answer this question.
Screen sharing this computer?
No, we're screen sharing from here. I can screen share from here though.
Well. They logged into it here.
No, I am not.
You need to be in Menti on this computer.
Oh, logged in?
You need to be presenting from this computer.
Presenting this.
Yes, from this computer.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll have to come back to our Mentimeter poll maybe at our break.
Okay.
All right, Charlie, then we will
All right.
switch it over to you.
It's
Owen said you have to stand right in front of this mic.
Problem for me, Jess.
I know it is. I think we can do it though.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us this morning. And let's get started. So a few things, the agenda, introduction overview, we'll get through some additional steps here. But I want to take everybody through the program basics and eligibility. We're making some changes at OCR. We're making some hopefully positive changes with the CDBG program. So we'll go through some of that. The application funding process, we'll talk about the 2025 cycle and what's coming up. And then getting into the program compliance and requirements. And then there's I forget how far in just, but there is a couple breaks. So there's a 15-minute break this morning, and then sometime noonish, a little after, we'll break for lunch and then come back. And then we've got Cass Buell with Lewis County. We've got Mike Horsey with Jeff County. And then Just will come up and talk about some technical assistance that EFC offers. And then we'll get into some Q&A resources. Just, do we want to take questions during the session, or do we want to wait till the end?
During the session, well.
Okay, all right. So is somebody monitoring the chat? Okay, perfect. Okay. So yeah, so quick intro overview. Again, thank you everybody for taking the time to travel up here to Syracuse this morning. Again, purpose of the program, we support community development. We're going to provide funding to the state and local governments. As you guys know, it's cities, towns, villages, counties are eligible to apply for CDBG. It helps to promote affordable housing. It's, for low and moderate income families, there's economic opportunities to support job creation, business growth. There's also disaster recovery assistance in public facilities. So CDBG is one of the, I think, I've been working on this for over 25 years. It's a pretty flexible program. There's a lot of different variables, and if something may not quite fit the specific box that you're looking at, but if you pick up the phone and talk to us, it might be a way for us to make it work. But again, it's a huge impact. We've transformed communities. And again, I've worked with Cass and Mike quite a bit and within your communities. Greg, we've worked with you guys down there, so down in Danby. So it's just to show of hands for the folks in the room, who's actually did receive CDBG in the past. Okay. So you guys are all, yeah. So hopefully there's been some type of positive impact with your communities. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions as we go through this morning session. So again, CDBG, it's federal. I know there's a lot of questions right now from folks about the federal level. Our funding that we are about to put out for 2025 is actually the funding that we received in 2024. So we'll have our allocation. The CFA is going to be opening up soon. I'll talk about that in a few minutes, in the CDWL for the housing side of the program. But we have in total around $72 million that we're actually putting out in a NOVA now. I don't want to give away the house. That's my giving away the lead already. But I'll talk about how that's broken down. The funding that we expect to receive for 2025. So we've received our allocation. It's around $47 million. That will actually go out the door next year. And then we'll see what happens after that. But again, this is federal. It's through the Housing Community Development Act. It's through HUD. again, the purpose of the CDBG, 70% of our funding. So on an annual basis, we've been receiving 50 million. It's gone down a little bit the last couple of years. But again, 70% of our annual allocation we have to demonstrate to HUD at the end of the day is going to benefit low and moderate income persons. We are typically over 90% with that ratio. So we've done a really good job, and it's kudos to you guys. It's not just us, but it's also kudos to the practitioners out in the street for making that happen as well. Just a little background on how we are set up. So you've heard all about homes and community renewal. Remember back in the day, there was the division of homes and community renewal. So this is actually how the structure of HCR is actually set up. And you can see that we are the Housing Trust Fund Corporation. It's technically where I work. And the CDBG program is parked under the Housing Trust Fund Corporation. So if anyone's been, I know, Mike, you've been around long enough to remember this. So prior to 2000, the CDBG program for New York State was administered by HUD. New York State was the last state to actually take over the program, which was something that was mandated back in the 80s. So since 2000, the states administered CDBG. Hawaii is the only other state that does not administer their own state program. So under HCR, under the Housing Trust Fund Corporation, then you get down to us, the Office of Community Renewal. These are all the programs. Oh, one got cut off a little bit. Sorry about that. These are all the programs that are currently within our office. So the CDBG program, the Main Street or home program rather, are both federal. The home is also through HUD. The other programs, hopefully you're familiar with most of these. These are all state-funded programs. So the New York Main Street program down for Healthy Homes. If you have questions on any of these, I can try and answer your questions. I left goodie bags. I know it's not quite fashion walk gift bags. Sorry about that. No one's going to get rich off it, but there are brochures talking about a lot of these programs. And it's great access. Some of these, I'll be honest with you, are undersubscribed. So the Restore program and Access program tend to be undersubscribed on an annual basis. So the Restore program, if you're not familiar with it, is emergency repairs for the elderly, and Access is accessibility modifications within the home. And there's three categories. There's the general access to home. There's access to home for heroes, which is for vets. When the legislation was originally set up, you had to have a service related disability to qualify for that. They've changed that. So if you're a veteran and you have a change of life disability, you're not going to qualify for the access to home for vets. And then there's also the access to home for Medicaid. So again, the way that we're structured, again, all these different programs, most of the not-for-profit, everyone else, let me go back. So on this slide, CDBG, I can only work with local units of government, cities, towns, villages, and counties. Everyone else on the list, if you're working with a not-for-profit, or you can work with a municipality, you can work with an IDA, LDC. These other programs can all apply through those other entities. The CDBG program is unique that we can only work with local units of government. And this is how the money comes down through the Homes and Community Renewal, through the trust fund. Again, on this side, the cities, towns, villages, counties, and then we will make the awards to the local municipalities, which then you're providing the grants for local assistance. Just to give an idea of what we did, this is kind of an anomaly, I'll be honest with you. The THIP and the VRP program were new last year, so they did skew our numbers a little bit, but I think that's pretty impressive for an office of about 35 people. This was the volume that we produced in 2024, and we expect to have similar numbers for 2025. For CDBG, if you're, I know most of you folks are either from the Southern Tier, Central New York region. This kind of gives you an idea of where over the last 5 years, where the applications have come in from and where the money's been funded. This actually helps us because we can shift, priorities sometimes. You can see the Mid-Hudson has a high public infrastructure, but they're relatively low on community planning and the public facilities. So just kind of gives us an idea if there's a deficiency, and this is something I've talked with Jess about. It's kind of marketing and trying to do the correct outreach to make sure we're reaching the communities. It's interesting. There's over 1,600 eligible municipalities across the state for CDBG. So 62 counties, and then you count up all the towns, the villages, the cities. About half have actually come in over the last 25 years and applied for funds, and probably 60–70% of those have actually received funds. So again, there's a big gap there that we're not reaching everybody. And this is just specific. You can see from this, the biggest need here is housing, which really should not surprise anybody. The housing stock in the state is quite old. So over the last 5 years, again, 153 housing awards to municipalities across the state. One more figure here for you. This is just where the money's, this is just for CDBG. So I know I put the list up to 175. How are we doing? I missed Chris there with his hope. Where am I going? Are we good? Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So again, you can kind of see the distribution of funds across the last 5 years. This is just for infrastructure. This is one of the big pushes. And again, we do through the state co-funding initiative. There's 2 EFCs. There's these guys, which are my favorite EFCs, which they're a great technical assistance provider. And there's also the other EFC, the Environmental Facilities Corporation, based in Albany, DWC, WSRF, the WQIP, the WIA, little alphabet soup of program. So again, this is just kind of give you an idea of structure by infrastructure where the funds have gone the last few years.
Charlie,
Yes.
the question on that.
Yep.
Maybe you can disclose this, maybe you cannot.
Okay.
If the North Country, and I zooming in on that. If the North Country is showing that, maybe isn't not taking advantage of the infrastructure awards by region, as much as say the Finger Lakes, Mid Hudson, Southern Tier, does that play a role in your decision making when you're awarding projects? Like,
Yes.
okay, good to know.
Again, we see. So in full disclosure, I used to be a consultant before I came over to the dark side of the state. So you still have to have a good application. Yes, we don't fund geographically, but when we will take a lot of things into consideration. The big thing that this does is this allows me, and this is part of the reason why we're here today, because you can see for Central New York, the numbers are relatively low for infrastructure. And we're trying to help build the capacity. We don't want, I know there's a lot of small municipalities, but there's a lot of technical assistance available to you to help get you through this process. We can help you build, the consultant base, the engineering base. This is why I brought Mike and Cass in from the counties, because again, at the local level, my first go-to is always going to be like, what county are you in? And I'm going to send them to the county for guidance. I know they both work quite a bit, so they're going to be able to answer a lot of your questions. I can give you templates for like RFPs, RFQs, and invitation for bids, stuff like that. But in terms of the actual procurement, it's really up to you to handle that locally. We can help guide you through the process, but part of our goal again is to help build that local capacity so that you can come in. Where's Lisa with Boonville? So again, I'm not sure where everybody's from, but again, I've worked with Boonville, and again, you guys are a smaller community, but you've come in a few times and you've been successful. Again, so it's possible, so don't be afraid. Yes, there's a lot to it, but once you get in and you're familiar with it and you don't have to take everything on, this is why we give you the soft costs as part of the awards, to give you the ability to hire consultants and engineers to help you through the process, so you don't have to take all of this on. And there's other folks too, like on the infrastructure side, you've got to have bond counsel and you've got to have financial management. So there's good financial consultants out there that we can refer you to. We can't give you, I can give you some names, but I can't tell you who to go to. Too loud or too low? Oh, sorry. So again, just some background information again. We talked about this a little bit. The CDBG program is under the Homes and Community Renewal, or CDBG is under HUD, sorry. Again, the way that HUD works is there's an allocation. If they look at population, poverty, income, there's a bunch of trends. Since I've been on board, came on board with the state, the city of Ithaca, the city of Watertown, and a few other communities have gone entitlement. So they receive their funding directly from HUD. So we're working with what we call the non-entitlement world. We're in Onondaga County. There's no one in Onondaga County that is eligible for the state CDBG program. The county receives an allocation, and then the city of Syracuse receives its own allocation directly from HUD. So again, we HCR, we act as the program administrator, again, for those non-entitlement communities on the CDBG side, the ones that don't receive the funding directly from HUD. We're responsible for the state's share of funds. We're developing the action plan. So again, every year we go through a annual action plan, we update that. And I'm currently working on the next 5-year consolidated plan, which will take us from 2026 to 2030. So we're starting to work on that with kind of our game plan with where we want to move into the future. Again, did we do any CARES with Jeff County? No, but we did with you guys. I think we did a couple of projects. So again, there's a lot of things that we learned about through CARES, which was I'm sorry, I'm like completely blanking on the acronym for CARES. But it was the recovery assistance through because of COVID. So the state received $127 million. And it opened us up to a lot of different things that we've not thought about in the past or that we've been resistant to in the past that we're starting to open up and allow different things. So again, it's a learning curve for you, but it's also a learning curve for us. And we want to hear again from you, you're the practitioners, you're out there in the street. You need to let us know if this is working, if it's not working, is there something that we can do different? Sometimes we can't fix things. I know there's stuff with like the DEC wetland regulations that no one's happy about, but we don't have any control over that. There's other things, if we can work through other things, then we will. Again, I touched on this. CDBG, one of the things you have to meet is a national objective. If you can't meet the national objective, which is how you're demonstrating that you're meeting that low-income benefit to your beneficiaries, we're done. So that has to happen first. So again, there's a number of different criteria, but again, you have to be able to show that 51% of the beneficiaries in most instances are low and moderate income. The housing program, the direct beneficiaries have to be low income. If you're working in a multifamily housing complex, like we did with CAS with Snowball Housing, 51% of the units in that case had to be occupied by low income households. So that's the general parameter that we're looking at. That's most of how folks, so there's LMA, which is low and moderate income area benefit. There's LMH, which is housing. There's LMJ, which is jobs. LMC, which is limited clientele, and we'll get into some of those. There's seniors, disabled populations fall into the LMC. A bunch of different things. And then there is also urgent community needs. So there are instances when there's natural disasters, and this is something that we did through CARES. We had a waiver for this. Some communities did not have to meet that 51% threshold under CARES. So there were some waivers. But there's also, we have imminent threat. So we have an activity with our funding to address urgent needs, natural disasters, floods, fires, other events like that, that we can step in. Sure, some of you are familiar with the Lake Ontario flooding that began in 2017. I'm sure it's something some of you don't want to talk about. But we did set aside funding for that through the state and through the CDBG program, where we administered a lot of the Lake Ontario flood recovery program. In some of those communities, again, there were waivers in place where we were just, because of the nature of the situation, we were able to fund some of those under this urgent need, which means you can still receive assistance and be under 51% low income. Again, these are the national objectives. These are there's a bunch of them. I didn't put up the whole laundry list of activities. And I kind of touched on these a few minutes ago. But again, these are the national objectives. You have to be able to meet one of these criteria for eligibility. And again, under the 51%, there's a few different ways that you can show this. There's census data. We have a link. So if you go to my program guidelines on the website, there's a link to this LMI data tool. You plug in the name of your municipality, you'll bring it up, and bring you all the census. It starts out with the county level, and just click through. It'll give you the city, the village, and at the county level, I think it also will break it down by census tract. So that's one of the things on our list too. We have a separate list. If your community is over 51% low or moderate income, there's a list there where we list everybody out. It's alphabetical by county. To whatever county you're in, go to that. It'll give you all those communities in your county that are already above 51% low or moderate income. The other one that I didn't touch on is the LMC-MC, and that is specific to microenterprise. So microenterprise assistance, I'll get to some of this, is businesses with 5 or fewer employees at the time of application. If the business owner qualifies as low income, that business qualifies under LMC-MC. Again, we talked about who's eligible. The eligible applicants, cities, towns, villages, counties, again, 62 counties across the state, 48 are eligible to participate in the program. So upstate, Erie County, Monroe County, Onondaga County are all entitlements. Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, again, receive their own allocation as well. There's a scattering of other, Jamestown, Chautauqua County is entitlement. I mentioned Watertown, Albany, Schenectady, Troy, Saratoga, Glens Falls, on, and then you get down to the lower Hudson Valley. Most of the counties down there, except for Putnam County, are also entitlements. And again, it's, you have to be able to meet this LMI benefit. That is key to eligibility. This is, again, generally the map. So if you look at the grayed areas, those are all the entitlement jurisdictions. And they're not eligible for participation. Westchester County is kind of a mix. There's some county or some municipalities within Westchester County that have opted out of the county's consortium. But in general, this is the eligibility. If you're in the green, you're going to be eligible for CDBG assistance. So what are we funding? Public facilities. Accessibility modifications is big. I can't stress that enough. It's big. We're really pushing this. So one of the things with accessibility modifications is you don't have to be 51% low income to benefit from participating in this. Because it's assistance to disabled, you qualify under the LMC. The other nice thing with this is, generally speaking, buildings for the general conduct of government, city hall, town hall, county buildings are not eligible for assistance, but for accessibility modifications. So if your existing building needs accessibility modifications, ramps, elevators, lifts, restrooms, anything within the building, it is going to automatically be eligible and qualify for assistance. Emergency facilities and equipment, fire trucks, fire departments, firefighting equipment, any of these, this you have to be 51%. over 51% LMI to qualify for the emergency facilities and equipment, and then facilities for seniors. If it's a senior center, again, seniors are a presumed benefit class under HUD, so they will qualify under LMC. Public infrastructure is the big criteria: drinking water, sanitary sewer, stormwater management. Again, you have to be 51% or higher for that. Again, if you're looking at the census data, and you come back and it's like 47%, LMI's like, oh darn, I can't qualify. Well, we don't know that because again, we've got TA providers. EFC is one of our TA providers. There's also a Rural Community Assistance Partnership that may also be able to assist you with doing a no-cost income survey to come into your community. They come in and work with you, get you set up, and you can run out and do the survey yourself. Or our CAP will come in and actually undertake the whole process for you on your behalf. So there's a couple different ways you can qualify for that. Housing rehab. I want to point out again, this is one that we're pushing quite heavily, is this infrastructure and support of existing housing. So housing rehab is very broad, but what we're talking about here specifically is lateral connections for water or sewer, as long as the household is eligible. On the septic side, if you want to decommission the existing septic and connect them to the public system, we also include engineering for the decommissioning, so the homeowner's not stuck with any of the cost. But this also allows us to go into a manufactured home park. We know that these are typically neglected, and I'll talk about this a little bit more detail. But again, as long as the park, you probably have to do some type of an income survey. But that's another one that is big, and we are pushing that quite heavily within the program. And then you've got the typical owner-occupied housing rehab where the owner is income eligible. It's soup to nuts, and I joke because I'm going back to the days when I was a consultant. I love my little old ladies, but this was not a extreme home makeover show. You know, cameras and Ty Pennington did not show up. This was oftentimes stuff that nobody saw that we were actually able to do. So it's insulation, it's the electrical, it's the plumbing, it's the heating system. That's the stuff. You have to look at this. You have to have a comprehensive approach to your housing. And we look at the primary components, the major structures, the roof, the foundation. If your foundation is shot, don't touch the house. We're going to take it down and we can actually replace it with CDBG if that's necessary. CDBG has no cap on per unit assistance. So if your cost to rehab the house is $100,000, that's fine. That's not an issue with us. If you're going to replace the unit, that is fine also. And again, there's no cap. That is driven at the local level. There's some where we've done replacements with, you know, the stick built, and it's coming in anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000, depending on where you are within the state and the needs of the home. Just a few sidebars with the owner occupied. It also gets you the ability. There's a do some really neat things. So we hit a house up in the North Country. This is either up in Franklin or Clayton County. Guy was a double amputee, 2-story house. The bathroom was upstairs, and he was living on the porch because that was the only place that they could accommodate a bed for him. The house was way beyond repair. And it was also a architecturally historic, significant house. But we got the clearance from SHPO. We photographed everything, every little nuance and facet of the house was photographed and submitted to SHPO, and it was all archived. We're actually able to go in, take the house down. We relocated them temporarily, which is another eligible cost if you have to relocate somebody. And we're able to bring in a modular accessible unit for the property owner with ramps and everything. So it's win-win. Didn't like to see the house go, but again, sometimes the house you have to accept the fact that the house is just too far gone. It's also a touchy situation. Again, living with or my prior world as a consultant, you have to treat this with kid gloves because you're telling somebody your house is not suitable for human habitation, and you have to be very careful with how you approach that with the property owner. But and get them to understand that this is what we're doing, what you're proposing to offer to them is safe housing long-term. And that's one of the other things we really look at is what is the long term, what's the lifespan of the improvements? Where CDBG is no longer doing manufactured housing replacement, but there is the MMHR program, the Manufactured Housing Replacement Program. Home is also doing replacements. But we will, I think we are permitting that replacements, but I think we're still allowing, if you've got an existing manufactured unit that is beyond the lifespan, we can actually come in, take the unit out and actually do a stick built on site. So replace the unit, mobile home manufactured unit with a regular stick built or modular in its place. So moving on, economic development. This is all about job creation. Touched on the microenterprise assistance. Again, businesses with 5 or fewer employees at the time of assistance. This is about job creation. With the micro program, again, if the business owner qualifies as low income, you've met the criteria under the LMC-MC, there's no job creation required. But if it's the LMC or LMJ rather, the expectation is the business, even if you have 5 employees at the time of assistance, that doesn't preclude you from adding onto your employment base. It's 5 or fewer at the time of assistance. This is up to $300,000. I think you guys, Jeff County, I know the Lewis County, you've both done the micro program, correct? Or, yeah, okay. So again, it's the current awards under the micro are up to $300,000. And then it's up to a maximum of $35,000 in assistance per business. We also have a nice feature that we've started called Renewal. So if you get your first micro program and you are successful and you complete it on time and there's no issues, you can come back in and say, I'd like to renew my contract, and we will extend it with a new award rather than making you go through the application process all over again. And again, you've got the traditional, the small business assistance. Again, typically 25 or fewer employees. That is up to 40% of the project cost, up to a maximum of $750,000. There is a floor at $100,000. So if the ask is less than that, we're not going to consider it. These are both a 2-step process. So you go through the pre-application process. These are all open round. And once you've passed the muster with the pre-app, then you'll be given the green light to apply, submit the full application. And it's basically your path to funding. We do imminent threat. This is, again, fires, natural disasters. We've had landslides. We've had, I've got some examples here that we'll get to in a little bit. Building collapse. So this is all stuff that we've covered under imminent threat, but we've also got, we started calling it the BPCP, Vacant Property Clearance Program, but we've now kind of rebranded that already after a year, and it's just falling under the imminent threat program. So what this is, if you have a vacant, blighted building in your community that needs to come down, we can assist you with this. It's up to $1 million in assistance again on that. There's a catch with that. There is no redevelopment post demo for at least 5 years. So we can still assist you if you've got something that is you're planning on redeveloping. Maybe we can do it through economic development. If you're coming in under the imminent threat and you want to apply for that, you have to understand, the owner has to understand that there is no redevelopment for at least 5 years under that. But again, it covers everything from the engineering, the abatement, clearance, and surface restoration is all eligible for assistance. If I would get to the community planning technical assistance, again, this is very, very broad. We don't, we've not boxed this in by any stretch of the imagination. We've left this intentionally wide open. What we won't fund are strategic plans, comprehensive plans, and master plans. But if you have your priorities in any of those documents, that's the stuff that we want to look at. We can help you develop full plans out of those. the idea here is with this is you're doing a needs assessment, you're doing preliminary engineering, you're doing something to get started. This is your first step towards the actual implementation. These projects, when you come in and apply for the community plan and the technical assistance, you need to be able to show that there's a LOMAD benefit in implementation. So if it's a housing needs assessment, we'll work with you, we'll do the needs assessment. You submit the report to us, and then we expect to see you come back into the next funding round and use that data to make the argument for your housing application. We need to see these things get into implementation. This is up to $50,000. You can use this as match for other funds. The economic development, just to step back to that again, that is again, up to 40% of the project cost, up to $750,000. The microenterprise has a 10% owner equity. Those are the only two actual activities that actually have a quote unquote match requirement. All these other activities that we've talked about, there is no match requirement. So what can't we do? We talked about the government buildings. Again, City Hall, Village Hall, Town Halls generally are not eligible for CDBG assistance, but for the accessibility modification. So we funded 3 last year, the Town of Butler, Village of Scotia, and I apologize, I'm drawing a blank on the third one right now. So again, we did those. So as long as it's an existing building, if you're proposing to build new, you're not going to qualify for the accessibility modifications, but you already have to build it to code. This is about existing structures where it's the physical removal of architectural barriers for accessibility modifications. Again, general operating expenses we cannot pay. So again, I know a lot of the projects with the infrastructure side, you have to go out to bond. There's a bond council, you're making interest payments. That unfortunately is not eligible for CDBG assistance. The whole program is set up on the premise that this is a reimbursement on a cost incurred basis. So that's how the program works. That's why we can't pay for the general operating expenses. And of course, political activities are also ineligible. Do we have a question or? Oh, good. All right. This is a good time. Yeah.
All right, great. So our first question came in from Julie Aldridge. If the segment of your project is in an area that is greater than 51% LMI, but the town in its whole is not, would that project be potentially eligible?
It depends. So again, what we're looking at is the service population, who's benefiting from the improvements. The benefiting population has to be 51%. So in that case, if it's let's just say it's a town park. So the town may be at 49% LMI, but the census tract where the park is located is 52%. It's not going to be eligible because it's a benefit for the entire town. So in that case, the service population doesn't meet the criteria. However, if it's a district, it's a sewer district, it's a water district that follows the census tract boundaries, that would allow the project to become eligible.
Our next question is from David West. Can public infrastructure cover initial design of stormwater facilities, or does that program only cover construction?
So we can do, under the community planning, we can do the preliminary engineering. So the community planning is in technical assistance. Once you're at the point that you're ready to implement the project and do the infrastructure, so if you're coming in with a stormwater application, we have the expectation that you've got preliminary engineering is completed at that point at application. We will assist you, and there's an allocation. So again, every project that we fund, there's an allocation of up to 18% for soft costs. Again, I know in the past, we've always broken that out, 5% for admin, 18 or 13% for engineering. And kicking and screaming, I've agreed to probably modify that moving ahead. So if somebody wants to forego the admin, we will allow you to take the full 18% for engineering moving ahead. So if you've got your preliminary engineering and you need to go to final design at that point, yes, you can take the portion of the award to go through the final design, get your approvals, and get the project out ready for bid.
Great. How about two more, and then we can take some
Yeah.
more at the break. Another from Julie Aldridge. Do you have to bring up to code first before costs for installation, et cetera, similar to EISEP?
Not
You
sure.
have to
what-
bring up to code. All right, Julie, I'll circle back with you for clarification. Can Charlie touch on if a municipality has their municipal office in the same building as a fire hall, police department, public works office, can the municipality apply for the public facility grant?
For accessibility modifications.
Okay, for
Yes,
88. yeah.
and also if it's a combined building, the fire department is a separate side. So we could, there is actually the potential to do accessibility modifications under one application. But if it's an attached fire department, there is the separate, the emergency services. So they could actually apply if the improvements are to the fire department. We could assist with it, or actually in the case I touched on this with the Village of Scotia, it's a large project that they're doing. So that's actually an example of one where the fire department, the police station in the village office was all in one building. They've actually moved the fire department out into a new facility. So if that were the case, we could actually assist with the construction of a new fire department as long as you're 51% low income. Okay. So, application funding process, I think that we've got a 15-minute break after we get through this, section. You guys are pretty quiet in the room here. I'm doing all the jibber jabbering up here. Do you guys have any questions at this point? Yep.
So the public facilities accessibility, can that be at more than one location? Like,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Village hall is one place, fire department is
Yes.
another. Okay.
Yes. So, and I just want to point out, so fire departments in general, what we're talking about here under the public facilities, it has to be buildings for the generally accessible to the public. So I know I get calls all the time, somebody needs to build a new DPW building. Unfortunately, something like that is not eligible under our guidance because it's not publicly available. That's kind of limited to just the public works employees. Yeah, something like that with the fire department, because again, they typically also serve as like cooling shelters, warming shelters, emergency shelters. That's kind of why the fire departments fall under that broader umbrella versus the police station. It's kind of a little bit more restrictive. We don't generally fund improvements to the police stations. Yep.
And then just following up on that, what are the eligible activities under that program, like for design and engineering and construction?
For the accessibility, yeah, so you can come in, so if you wanted to, you could come in this year and apply for the like a needs assessment, preliminary engineering under the category for your public buildings to do accessibility modifications. And then you complete that, get you all set up, and then you actually take that, come back next year and apply for the implementation money. So it's kind of a two-step process.
What about ambulances?
Yes.
If that would be covered?
Yep, ambulances, so as long as with some qualifiers, as long as it's a if it's the municipality, if the ambulance is serving the eligible municipality, that's fine. I get into some situations where I've got a district up in the North Country, covers 350 square miles. Something like that's like we can't, it's almost impossible to try and qualify something like that. So if it's like a fire district, we have to look at because that's benefiting the fire district. If it's a mutual aid agreement, we don't consider that as part of like the service population because that's just something that's generally done. If it's a paid service contract, so we just funded a fire truck for the city of Portland. But it's serving the city, but they also have mutual aid agreements with the surrounding communities. We didn't consider any of that versus some other communities where it's the village might have the active fire department, but they've got paid contracts with adjacent fire districts that would also have to be considered part of your benefiting population. You have fire trucks, ambulances, any of your emergency vehicles would be eligible for assistance.
So is it recommended to apply for the needs assessment first?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So, yes, so the question is, do you need,
Recommended to apply for needs assessment or technical support first before you apply for.
right, yeah, so Lisa's asking if it's necessary to apply for the needs assessment first before applying. So
For the accessibility.
well, yeah, for the accessibility. So again, you don't have to. In the case of the Village of Scotia, they actually came in, they had this all done when they applied for the CDBG funding. I actually worked with them up front. So because it was part of a larger project, you can, if you've got this and it's ready and you've done something previously, we'll accept that. Generally speaking, we don't want to see stuff that's more than 2 years old, primarily because of the cost estimates and if there's any changes. Anything that's more than 5 years old, we won't accept. But no, you don't have to come in first for the needs assessment. If you want to do that on your own and then come in and apply, you can do that. But again, the funding's there. If you need that is the first step to get started. So Robert's going to hit the road here pretty soon. I don't have the exact date, but the expectation is the CFA, the Consolidated Funding Application for the larger portfolio of projects, will be opening up fairly soon. We've actually issued, we sent our NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, over to the State Register, so that it should actually appear in the next publication. And again, it's going to lay all the details out. So you've got the larger spectrum of the CDBG. It's going to cover what we call the competitive side of, which is now public infrastructure. It's also going to cover the housing program. So housing is through CDOL, Community Development Online. If you're looking at applying for the housing program, you have two steps. The municipality has to be registered with CDOL. So if the municipality, like Lisa, you're with Boonville, if Boonville's never applied for housing through CDOL, you have to register the village first, and then you have to have authorized users attached to the entity.
What about for a pro housing community?
So pro housing,
Along
no, so that's separate. We want to see that. And again, under the state funded side of the programs, in order to be eligible for state funding, now you do have to be a pro housing community. But we do look for that, but two separate categories. Again, CDOL is our own internal application system within Homes and Community Renewal. So it's used for the CDBG program, for the home program, the other state programs. We all use CDOL. So again, the entity that's applying for the funds has to be registered, and then you have to have authorized users. So there's two steps that have to be taken care of. And if you're looking at doing that, for everybody that's in the room, everybody that's online, start that process now. The forms are actually on my website. It can take, especially once the applications open up, the staff that does that tends to get a little bit busy, so it can take a little bit of time. And every year, somebody's going to call me on the last day. I can't submit my application. I'm getting this error message, and we find out that they're not registered yet. So take care of all that stuff up front now before you panic. And because again, it's once the deadline hits, especially with the CFA, it's that 4 p.m. deadline date. I know that's a separate process, but again, we can't do anything after 4 o'clock. They shut it down. Same thing with the housing side. It's 4 p.m. on the deadline date. We have to shut everything down. So don't wait to the last minute to reach out to us. So we talked about this, the competitive side of the program, the public infrastructure that is through CDOL, the housing program, or CFA rather, and the housing is through CDOL. There is a change this year, community planning in the public facility side of the program is now open round. So there is no deadline per se. Once the CFA opens, these programs are going to be officially open for the remainder of the year. We've got an informal deadline at this point of October 31st, just for the program year, because if we're trying to get stuff into the board by the end of the year. So there is a big change. It's also a faster application process because in the past, under the public facility, the community planning, you submitted your application, you stayed back and waited and waited and waited. And now, once you go through this process again, it's a pre-application process. Once you're given the green light to apply, the time is really up to you in terms of how quickly you want to get everything completed and get this, everything submitted. We informally, again, the expectation is we're going to be taking our award recommendations. We have to take everything back to the Housing Trust Fund. It is a physical board that approves everything. And we're looking at taking everything every couple of months. Again, there's theoretically, if you, once the CFA opens and you submit your application for a public facility for accessibility modifications in July, and the application's solid, there's a good expectation that we would actually be issuing the contract with you by September. So much faster process to get through that. Greg, look like you got a question. Or you just in like shock, like, oh my God, I can't believe they finally did this.
That's my shock.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. So that's one of the things that has deterred us from applying for additional community planning because we know that we need the plan. Like,
Yep.
for instance, we're looking at doing an EMS plan
Mhm.
for the whole county. So do you think that that would be a good fit for community planning? I mean, we were thinking of moving forward with that on our own.
Yeah, so it's
Because of-
actually good. It's actually good. Thanks, Cash, for asking that. It's a good question. I want to, and again, I say that CDBG is a very flexible program, and for the most part, it is with qualifications. So again, there's 2 counties in the state that are currently about 51% lower moderate income. Unfortunately, Lewis County, good or bad, Lewis County is not one of those. So Schoharie County and oh God, I just had it. It's Orleans County. Are both over 51%. So in those instances, if Schoharie or Orleans County wanted to come in and apply for an EMS plan, they're selling. For Lewis County, we'd have to work with you to be able to show that at least what portion of that plan, the county's not 51%, but what portion of that project would go directly, if implemented, would go to benefit a low-income population. If we can show that, Scott and I will work with you to put that together. But yeah, that is a great question, though. Any other, I see other hints? No? Okay. Yeah, so that is a big shift for us for this year. So again, once the CFA opens, if you've got questions, pick up the phone, give us a call. So it's available. So public infrastructure, again, this is up to $2 million. This is your water projects, your sewer projects, your stormwater management projects. This is up to $2 million. That's with the expectation that you've got co-funding in hand. Again, I'm asking the folks in the room, we should have had, I'd love to be able to do the ability to do more surveys on the fly, just in the future. So like, who's familiar with the co-funding initiative in the state? Okay, so the New York State Co-Funding Initiative has been around for over 20 years. And what it is, it's a collaboration of multiple state agencies. So the other EFC, the Environmental Facilities Corporation, is the lead. And they've been designated the lead since we started this. But it's EFC, Department of Health, DEC, Department of State. There was the Oil Spill Fund. There's a bunch of other agencies. There's Homes and Community Renewal is one of the partners in this, USDA. We are all partners in this collaborative co-funding initiative. So on the infrastructure side, all of CDBG, CDBG always has to be last in. So we have to see that there's no other funding available, or that you've got a gap, or that the funds are needed to make the project more affordable. So with this, you've got a $10 million infrastructure project. We need to see that your other funding, you've got your funding set up through EFC, you've got WQIP, the Water Quality Improvement Program. If I use any of these acronyms, you don't know what they are, tell me to stop. I just throw out the alphabet soup like I expect everybody to know. There's WIA, Water Infrastructure Improvement Act. So we expect to see that you've got all your funding in place. You've got USDA. CDBG has to follow at the federal level, because we're federal funds, we have to follow the duplication of benefits. So if CDBG is only displacing other grant funds already made available, I have to step back. Case in point, had an application come in from Western New York last year that applied for $2 million. They had all their other funding in place. And at the end of the day, because I have to vet everything with my co-funding partners before we actually go to award, that $2 million ask got reduced to $700,000 because that was all that there was room for additional grant dollars in their plan of finance. Anything above $700,000 would have just started displacing other grant dollars, and I can't do that. So again, you may have loans. EFC may offer you some loans. USDA may offer you some loans. There's the possibility that maybe we don't put you so far in debt by using some CDBG funds. Again, community, there's the other EFC has this community assistance teams, and there's links to this, so you can request a consultation with the co-funding group. We'll sit down, we'll partner with you, but it's important to have that discussion on the infrastructure side with everybody at one time. Don't come talk to me, then go talk to USDA, and then go out to EFC. It's not going to work out that way. You need to pull everybody together up front, because again, we want to make sure that you can maximize your CDBG dollars as part of your project. Again, the public facility, this is up to $1 million. Again, it's showing that you've got, there's no other funds available. Or again, we're filling the budget gap. Housing, again, is up to $1.5 million for the infrastructure and support of existing housing. So the mobile home park that needs a new sewer system, that's up to $1.5 million. The lateral connections, countywide lateral connection program, that's up to 1.5. The regular traditional stick-built housing rehab, that is up to $750,000. On the imminent threat side, again, this is up to $1 million. So all of these, again, you need to have, I call it a plan of finance. We need to see that you've got everything in place. Microenterprise, I touched on this, $300,000 total award, but I like that feature that we've implemented a couple of years ago with that renewal process. It's a one-time renewal, so you can't keep coming back year after year, but one-time renewal that we'll do with you if your first go at it is successful. We've had several of these go through this year. We talked about the small business assistance. Again, this is up to $25,000 per job. It's kind of tough, as I know on the ED side. We do have that floor of $100,000 for the application. There's a number of reasons for that. You got to keep in mind that with these, there's a certain level of administration, there's a certain amount of reporting that's required, and there's really as much work for you, but it's also at $100,000 is they're at 1.5 or even $2 million. But on the small business assistance, we really want to see some impact for this. So there's a number of reasons that we have for that floor. And again, that is all based on job creation. There are instances where we can take job retention. It's a little bit tougher to demonstrate because the business has to publicly announce that but for CDBG assistance, this company is going to close, fold, shutter, and X number of jobs are going to be terminated. If we can show that, then there is the possibility of job retention. You also have to be careful because there's a prohibition on pirating. So I can't take jobs from Cass and Lewis County and ship them up to Jefferson County for Mike. So a number of different things we have to look at there. But again, the community planning TA, if you're thinking about anything, just pick up the phone. This is probably the most flexible activity. It's a great starting point for anybody to get started down that path of CDBG. One of the things I was talking to a few folks before, our interest is in helping you build local capacity. We don't want to just throw you to the wolves and say, go figure it out on your own. It's, believe it or not, we're from the government. I'm here to help. But we want to help you. We want to help you be successful with your projects. So again, we talked about this. This is just kind of that broad category. This is not a end all be all list. I don't want you to be boxed in by just what you see up here on this list. These are generally the categories that we see. But again, if you think of something that you're not quite sure about, is this going to fit? just pick up the phone, talk to me, talk to Scott. You can send, there's some contact info at the end of the slides. But this is, again, the slide indicates this is really about pre-development. This is intended to be your first step towards getting started, getting towards that long-term goal of true community development and redevelopment. How are we doing on time?
You're at 11:10.
Okay, I think we're going to be close. Okay. Okay. I have a bad habit of seeing shiny things or getting distracted and going off topic and talking about different things. So this is just an example of a community planning that we funded a few years ago, City of Gloversville Senior Center. I'm going to talk about more of this in just a minute. Again, this project qualified, again, City of Gloversville, a little over 14,000 population. City's almost 63% LMI. They met eligibility for this. And this is one of the things I wanted to show you is how they qualified. This is LMC, so limited clientele. The senior population, it's presumed benefit class. We awarded them the $50,000 to pull the engineering study together. The city contributed $3,000 in their own funds. So the public infrastructure, again, public water systems, private water systems as well. So it doesn't have to be public, it can be public or private water systems. And I've done a lot of those. The same thing on the sanitary sewer side. Stormwater management is designed to collect, convey, treat runoff, gutters, drains, culverts, retention bonds, swales, green infrastructure. Again, managed publicly or privately, depending on location. It is essential for flood control and water quality. So just a few examples. This was actually a good project because you can see got two really good pictures almost from the same spot, the before and after. This is the village of Newark over in Wayne County. Village is 8,400 residents, 63.3% LMI. So they qualified for this project under the LMA because this was one of their main roads through the village. Awarded the village $1 million for this, and they contributed 31,000 or 37,000 in local funds towards project costs. This next one, and I've used this for a few times, so if anybody's seen this before, I love this project, not because of the impact or because of any other reason, but John Syracuse, who's the supervisor for the town of Newfane, had everything that could go wrong with this project went wrong from day one. Beginning with the supervisor who was there at the time the project was awarded, passed away unexpectedly. Then you had all kinds of turmoil with the village or the town board. John was eventually appointed supervisor. And then the project itself fell apart because there was an adjacent village. They were supposed to decommission their system and join this. They backed out of the deal. But John did the right thing. He didn't panic. He picked up the phone and started talking to me from day one as soon as everything started to go south. And we got through it. It took him a little bit longer, but again, we worked with him because again, he was open, he was honest, he was upfront about what was going on. And we worked with the town to continue to get through this process, allow them to redesign process, because again, obviously without the adjacent community signing on, they would have been over capacity. We needed to downscale the size of the improvements that they were proposing. Again, great project. This was a district. So the town is 3,000 residents, 42% LMI at the town level. But again, they undertook an income survey to show that the district, the beneficiaries of this district were over 51%. It was a $5.5 million project. I think it actually went up from that, but they got through it. Again, accessibility modification. This is everything. Even judges' chambers, holding cells, you don't think about this, but yes, they're entitled to this. And HUD has told us, yes, it's all eligible. So everything within your public building, generally accessible to the general public. Again, no limits on this. Again, the award is up to $1 million. There's no match required. except if your project cost is in excess of $1 million, we do expect to see that you've got your other funds. And all of these projects, when you're looking at your projects to put these together, you got to keep in mind that these are 2-year contracts, they're 25-month contracts. So can you, from award to completion at the end of the 2 years, can you legitimately get stuff completed? It's not just spending the CDBG funds. It's not just exhausting those dollars within the 2-year time frame. It's completing the project. Can you show that the beneficiaries have access to those improvements at the end of the term? If you can, then you're going to be ready. So this is the one I talked to you a little bit about, the Village of Scotia. The village is 7,500 residents. Again, they're 47% LMI. We broke out a component, the accessibility modifications was about $1.5 million out of this project. We were able to fund the village with $1 million for the accessibility modifications. Again, part of this I mentioned about this was moving the fire department out of this building and into a new location. And Maria Schmitz is the village clerk. She's probably shooting for saying this, but if you've got questions, I've known Maria because this village was one of my clients when I was a consultant. So I've known Maria for 25 years. Just absolutely fantastic to work with. And if you want to know what it's like to go through this, this is one of my go-tos is I will refer you to other communities that have gone through similar processes and talk to them about their experience. But this again, this is just getting started. We just awarded this last year. So again, public facilities, again, it's pretty broad. The emergency equipment in a facility, so even down to like firefighting equipment, it's all eligible. Fire trucks, ambulances, anything like that. I know that these are big ticket items. Again, City of Portland, I mentioned that fire truck, it's a $2 million purchase, but we were able to fund the city for $1 million, and they bonded for the other half. City of Gloversville, a few years ago, they came in and applied for the engineering. They came back to us last year for improvements. And lo and behold, they're actually underway at this point. We funded them in 24, and they're starting the improvements for the project. So again, we talked about the city of Gloversville. Again, this for the senior population, this is LMC. So if you qualify, your national objective is LMC, you're going to automatically qualify. That's how you're meeting your national objective for this project. It's a they're putting a new roof, upgraded plumbing, HVAC, electrical systems, new kitchen, new bathrooms, interior, exterior finishes. So it's a pretty good project. We like that one a lot. Again, infrastructure in support of the existing housing. These are the activities. There's DEC also has funding for septic systems. There's certain bodies of water across the state that qualify for this DEC funding. They will pay 50% up to $10,000. But you've got a low-income household, they don't have $10,000 to pay for their share. And if the cost is over 10, if the total cost is $25,000, that means they have to shell out the $25,000 and wait for the $10,000 reimbursement. So again, this CDBG funds can be used as leverage for that. We can actually cover the owner's share of that cost. So they'll still get the cost, the $10,000 from the state. They'll still cover their cost. That's not statewide. There's specific bodies of water where that is eligible. Again, septic replacement includes all the engineering, internal plumbing modifications. If we have to move, if the septic is in the front, we need to move it to the back. We can pay for all those internal plumbing modifications. If you're taking somebody off septic into the public system, again, we can pay for all of that, including hookup costs for the municipality. And then the lateral replacement, I want to touch base on that again. DEC also has funding through the federal level. There's the lateral replacement program. Again, for this housing, you have to be income eligible. But again, this can be used as match for their funding. If you've got success with the DEC funding and it's not enough, we can use our funding as match.
Quick question.
Yep.
For the septic replacement, did you say that that can supplement the other portion along with the septic replacement grant?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, so DEC, yeah, we've partnered with the DEC, and so there's a way for the home, for income eligible homeowners to not have to get out any money. Typically what happens is the local municipality will front or forward that cost, the state's share, and we'll wait for reimbursement, and then we will pay for the property owner's portion.
Yeah, because we've been doing it along the lake. Most lake homes don't really qualify.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
But we've expanded up to other water bodies. So there's a lot more.
Yeah, so as long as you can demonstrate that you're the homeowner's income eligible, then yeah, we can use our funds to match that.
Then follow up to that, then, is that still also, I know some of the ones, if as soon as you go into the home, then that opens up a whole other, the whole home has to be up code and stuff, but is this?
So as long as we can go in and we do like de minimis, so just basic internal plumbing modifications. Yeah, so even like down to lead-based paint. So if you're just having to drill a new hole, bring the line in through the basement wall, but the basement wall is painted, 2 square feet is the de minimis standard under lead. So as long as you're not disturbing more than that, then we're not going to require any kind of lead testing. But what we would ask for in that case is some type of plan that if you get into an instance where the house needs more than just this new septic system, that you've got a plan in place to assist the owner with these other modifications they might need, the other rehab assistance, that you've got home fund or one of the other state funded programs to offer them assistance. That's what we want to see.
Great, thanks.
Yep. So this one, they're actually just wrapping this up. This is Pet Off Gardens. This is one of these, this was it's a 64 unit subsidized housing complex in Fulton County. Took them off the septic and into the public domain. And again, paid for everything from the decommissioning the existing septic, getting the unit hooked up to the public system and covered the hookup costs. We were generous enough, they came in actually a little bit under budget, which is unusual these days. But they had enough money. They asked us for permission to do some accessibility modifications around the complex, some new sidewalks and different things. We did allow them to undertake those improvements as well. So touched on this single unit owner occupied and multi-unit. Again, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's single unit can be owner occupied or rental. And then multi-unit can be owner occupied, multi-unit, or absentee owned. Again, no match requirements. The only requirement here under the housing program is that if it's a single unit, 51% have to be income eligible. So you say, what do? You got a 2-unit building, you can't be 51%. So in that case, one of the 2 units has to be income eligible. If you got a 3-unit, it's 2 out of the 3. If it's 4, 3 out of the 4 have to be income eligible, and you just kind of do the math from there. But that's the one exclusion to that is a 2-unit, one of the 2 units has to be income eligible. Covers everything. Again, we want to look at the major structure of the house, the foundation, the frame, the roof, the heating system, the mechanicals, the electrical system. That's the stuff that you should be looking at and taking a comprehensive approach. We don't want to Band-Aid this. We want to do everything. We want to put everything through one time. I know that that's driving up the cost. It might be $65,000, $70,000. But you're taking care of everything that the homeowner needs in one fell swoop, rather than making them come back multiple times over multiple years. Get through the program one time. When you're applying for these funds, don't be a hero. Don't tell me that you're going to do all these. I'm not concerned about the value of units that you're doing. That does not impress me. What we need to see is that you're taking a comprehensive approach. If you've got a $750,000 ward and you tell me you're doing 10 units, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Because we know that there's going to be higher costs for this. But again, we want that substantial, that soup to nuts, comprehensive approach to housing rehab, so that the homeowner doesn't have to come back and we can address everything for them one time. With this and with the public facility programs, we also have what we call this declaration of interest. in the property. So it's, in essence, it's a lien. But it does extinguish after, for the single family, it does extinguish after 5 years. For the multifamily, that may go up to 15 years, depending on the size of the investment per unit. Just a simple document. We've got, it's online. You can go take a look at it. But just keep that in mind, as you're going through the application. That is something to think about before you go too far down, the path, because you may get some resistance from property owners. But Office of Community Renewal, the Office of Community Renewal, we are not the holder of the instrument. You are. So if at the local level, we've given you the flexibility, we want to see this in place, but at the local level, you've implemented this and you've installed one on a property. 3 years down the road, the family needs to move because somebody lost their job or one of the occupants passed away or they're going into a nursing home. That's up to you if you want to discharge it. We'll support it, but that's up to you. We don't require you to hold it out for the full term. If there's reasonable expectations, it's HUD uses the term maximum feasible deference. If you can pass that and you want to discharge the lien for extenuating circumstances with the property owner within the term, that's at your discretion. So imminent threat funding. Oh, sorry, I got a couple examples here. This was just a project that we did. I'm trying to move along here so for time. Imminent threat, we talked about this. Again, the vacant clearance program is now part of this. If you've got what is typically the imminent threat, the flood, the mud, landslide, some other type of disaster, that goes back 18 months. And it's slightly different variables under that. So again, broad categories. This again is up to $1 million, and again, no match required for this. This is one of my projects. This was unfortunately the village of Sharon Springs in Schoharie County. Sharon Springs was kind of a preeminent resort town in its day. They've got multiple mineral baths, mineral springs throughout the village. This is just one of the old hotels. A few years ago, the mayor called me up and said they had had a torrential thunderstorm the night before. Building was already in danger of collapse, but just the wind, the rain, other factors, the building actually just collapsed during the thunderstorm. So we were able to work with the village to get this property cleared up. That's what the building looked like. That's what we ended up with. Again, economic development, we've touched on this. All of these categories, all of this, we want to see that you've got local support in the community. You guys know from practitioners that you all do that you're going to face resistance. Somebody's getting housing rehab assistance, they don't deserve it because XYZ. Well, it's not. You need the general support. You want to make sure you're doing a water district and you've got support for the improvements because maybe the costs are going to go up, but you've been able to engage with the residents to make this happen. So again, not just with the ED, but we want to see support for these projects at the local level. But we also need to see there's, in this instance, municipal support of the business itself before proceeding. Thank you, Cass, for letting me steal this slide from you. So this was one of Cass's micro projects that we did a few years ago. So I got to catch up here with my slides. So this was the tax shack. The owner in the picture, that's the owner, awarded $30,000. Project had total project cost of $33,000. I think, yes, this was the one you, with the local IDA, I think the IDA floated a $3,000 loan to the business owner to get him fully funded. And again, he qualified for eligibility under the LMCMC as micro. He is the owner. He qualified as low income. Why don't we take a quick? I still have quite a bit here. To get through. I'm not moving as quickly as I thought I was going to. So why don't we take a quick 15-minute break? Or do you want to keep going?
I think we should keep going.
Oh, shoot, do you guys need to take a break? I know no? Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So we'll keep going. So again, I've touched on all of this, and I can't stress enough. It's like, just because there's CDBG funding available, doesn't mean that, don't just apply because there's money available. You've got to develop your project. You've got to develop a plan. You have to know what you're doing, how to address this. And just think about it. You need to involve your residents. You need to involve the public. You need to have public meetings about this. Don't do this in a vacuum. You've got to have full public participation in order to make the project successful. We've talked about this with the other leveraging. Again, there's multiple other sources through New York State Housing Community Renewal. But you've got the Empire State Development, SHPO, the Office of Parks Recreation, NYSERDA, DOT, EFC. There's any number of other funding sources available to you to make your project whole. This is, again, this is not an end-all be-all list. This is just the typical projects that we see where projects have come in. They've lined up their funding through these other sources, and now they're coming to CDBG to hopefully help fill the budget gap or, again, make the project more affordable. So again, what is co-funding? I touched on this, the co-funding initiative. It's been around for over 20 years. These projects include anything. It's water treatment plants, it's the stormwater systems, it's the from point source water, from where the water literally comes out of the ground from your wells, right to the treatment plant, to the distribution system, the tanks, right to the kitchen tap, everything in between. Again, with this CDBG, and this is especially important with this one, CDBG really has to be last in. You have to have your other funding in place. Again, these are all typically multi-million-dollar projects. Lisa, I think you guys had one that was pretty expensive, and I know, Scott, we worked with Carthage on a few some pretty high ticket items, and I've got one that's up in the North Country. It might be over in, I don't think it's in Lewis County, but it's like a $25 million project for a relatively small community. So that was like mostly grant money in that case. Again, their benefits, it helps you to structure this. Again, with this is one of the projects you've probably heard about, the intended use plan. So we need to see the projects are on the intended use plan with EFC. It gives you a score. It basically sets you up. So the IUP has a multi-year list and an annual list. So if you're on the multi-year list, yes, we know that you submitted the project. It's been listed, it's been scored, it's been ranked. Maybe you're not above the funding line, but we know at least on the IUP, you can borrow money if you need to at the their AAA bond rating. So maybe that's a way for you to get started initially. If you're on the annual plan, that means you've been elevated, you're going through the loan closing, you've got grant, you've got loan, you've got your other funding in place. Again, it's CDBG is the three big ones are CDBG, EFC, and then USDA rural development. These are your housing options. Again, the home program, the New York Main Street program. These are all, you can mix and match. You can match federal funds. These are all state resources. If you're funded with these, you can use these as match for CDBG and vice versa. The MMHR, the Manufactured Mobile Home Replacement Program, has a cap of $100,000. It's not enough to replace a unit. So we have, in the past, while we were doing the replacements, we were funding everything over and above the 100. The home program is now also doing that. But all of these, you can incorporate the weatherization program. You can do the energy audits, incorporate those into your REIA programs. So are you ready to apply? And again, I said this and I can't stress this enough, just because there's funding available doesn't mean that you should apply. It's, again, you need to have project development, but these are the steps. You go through this, you put your project together, you do your outreach. You think you've got a sure thing. Again, we will talk with you up until the day that the application is submitted. it's particularly true now, with the competitive, because the infrastructure, once the CFA closes and the deadline passes, I can't talk to you any further. The open round, the way that that is set up, we can continue to work with you until you've got a complete application. The same thing on the housing side. Once the housing closes, we can't talk to you any further. It's so just now is the time, the opportunity to talk to us before award. Again, if the application is not funded, we will talk to you. There's a process that we will go through the application with you. Talk to you about what maybe where the deficiencies were. And sometimes it's not the deficiencies. We are oversubscribed, and there are literally, you're like right at the cost where you're at the funding line. We have to call it, we have a certain amount of money that we can put out in the street. Once we hit that point, we have to call it a day. And unfortunately, everyone that falls below that is we're not able to reach. So again, just some tips. Understand the program requirements. There's the public hearing process. There's the national objective compliance. Make sure you understand what it is that you're getting yourself into. We've talked about this, the needs assessment, gather the data, on your infrastructure, engage your stakeholders to identify any pressing needs. You want to have that full engagement because you don't want to get into this application and submit this and say, well, you didn't tell me, there was no public discussion on this, and why didn't you consider this over here? Clear, compelling proposal. It's state the problem, the solution, the exact impact. You want to be specific. You want to have measurable objectives, and again, community outcomes, community benefits. Collaboration with local governments. Again, Scott, just pick on you for a second. Just Carthage and West Carthage. We do joint applications. It's 2 municipalities adjacent that are going to have shared in cost and ownership of the facility, and we can do a joint application between the 2 municipalities. Again, it's the big thing is the strong data, the justification for the project. Cost efficiency. I can't tell you how important it is to have up-to-date cost estimates. Get an engineering report that's 3 years old and they haven't bothered to update the cost estimates. Well, guess what? Stuff is still escalating. Costs are still going up. So we want to make sure that you really in a strong position with it. The CDBG regulations, again, not just the eligibility, but you've got the national objectives. All of these projects, you have to have your environmental review submitted with the application. So we don't expect it to be through the release of funds process, but the NEPA process, the seeker process at the state level needs to be completed and submitted with your application. The infrastructure, yes, we understand. Maybe you're not through final design. You're going to do that post-award, but at this point, you should at least have the preliminary work done, your environmental, your consultations, everything should be completed at that point that you're ready to submit the application. SHPO is the big sticking point. I will get at least 1 application in every year where SHPO wants a phase 1A archaeological study done. It's a deal killer for us because you're another 12 months out before you can complete that 1A. And if they go to the second level, that's even further delay. So we need to have either a no impact from your consultations from not just SHPO, but from anybody. And if there is an impact, you've got a mitigation plan. There's a project that we did years ago in Oneida. It was around Oneida Lake. And it was a archaeologically sensitive area with the native nation that was, I forget which one. It took a long time to get through that, and the mitigation was the project had to pay to have somebody on site. This was an extremely sensitive, it was apparently adjacent to a burial ground for the nation that was involved, and we had to have somebody on site daily while they were excavating. That was the mitigation. That all has to be in place before you're ready to apply. Again, review, revise, check the submission guidelines. Again, nobody's perfect. In my prior days as a consultant, one of my first applications I submitted, I thought I did a great job. Until we submitted it, we found out that I had the wrong name of the municipality through the whole application. Kept my job. We didn't get funded, obviously, but so what happens? The deficiencies. You're not meeting the goals. You're not meeting the national objectives. You're not showing the low income benefit. We're not seeing the lack of community support. There's not enough data. You say you're going to do a housing rehab program, but you don't give me anything to support that. You don't show me any of your housing data. You don't show me that you've got a pool of eligible applicants waiting to apply. The budget is incomplete. We have to see the total project cost. I can't stress that enough. If it's a $5 million project, you're coming in to me for $1 million, you need to have everything else like laid out there for you're ready. Again, don't think your timeline is another big issue. Be realistic with this. Make sure that you've got a clear path and that you can complete this within the time frame permitted. So again, non-compliance with CDBG, that's another big issue. Proposing projects that are not eligible. If you're an entitlement community, if you're in Onondaga County and you apply, I'm not even gonna look at the application because we can't. If you've missed the deadline for the public hearing process, that's another issue. If you've missed the requirement by 1 day, it's part of the public citizen participation. If you've missed that requirement by 1 day, I don't have any waiver. I can't help you with it. Your application's done. It's deemed ineligible. If it's through the open round, now you can reapply. You can address that. But if it's through the competitive cycle, you're going to have to wait another 12 months before you're ready to apply. 15-minute break. We want to do it or you want to keep going? Okay, all right, sorry, all right. Okay. So program compliance, what time is it now? Okay, so I will try to get through this as quickly as I can. This is for everybody online, everybody in the room, this is all gonna be available to you. So my notes, my speaking points, so don't miss something, or if I have to skim over something, just in the interest of time. So contract requirements, again, we issue the award, you've got 45 days to return the contract, get it executed. All the requirements, they have to come back for the contract, the insurance, the project team, the schedule, signatories, the depository form, all that stuff has to come back within 45 days. When you're looking at this, 25 months. So if you can't complete the project, 13 months for the community planning projects, 25 months for everything else. If you can't complete that realistically within the time frame, scale the project back to something that can be more manageable or readjust your expectations before going. So we're looking for these to have release of funds. So your environmental review is submitted with the application. We expect to see you have your release of funds within 90 days of award, and you're ready to start expending funds within 6 months of award. NEPA is not optional. You have to complete it. It has to be completed in full. If anything's missing, it's going to have a substantial impact on your application. Determine the level of review. So there's CAT XA, there's CAT XB, there's exempt, there's converts to exempt. If you're not quite sure how to follow the whole suit, we will walk you through that process to help you make the determination as to what your category is for your NEPA compliance. But you also have to go through your seeker compliance. So we need to see that you've done your seeker documentation. We need the required documentation. Your environmental review is complete, maps, studies, consultations, public notices. So you've got your early and final floodplain notices. There may be other things you have to go through. There's, if you're working in a ag land and you're converting ag land to non-production, you have to go through that process with ag and markets. Again, consequences. You go issue a contract before you've got release of funds. You have to walk away. You're going to lose your contract. The whole project becomes ineligible at that point. There are delays. Project just does not move. There's terms in the contract now that if you're not meeting your milestones within 12 months, we're going to evaluate the process at that point, and we may consider rescinding the award after 12 months if you're not making any traction with the project. So and we kind of touched on this. Yes, again, NEPA, any federal assistance So if you're missing and matching, again, the expectation is your NEPA is covered for any other source, seeker's covered for any other source that you've got. Again, the big thing is you need to have the release of funds from my office before you sign a contract for construction. So anything that's not exempt. So your administration is an exempt activity, but any other costs, if you incur any of those costs, you sign any contracts for construction, this happens, we're done. I have to walk away at that point. The project becomes ineligible for CDBG assistance. Again, that is a big concern. Just make sure you've gone through the whole process before you make those steps. Again, determine, complete, publish, obtain release of funds. This is your required documentation. Again, it can be a bit of a bear. We would expect too that with your environmentals, you're also giving us at least your preliminary engineering for most projects, if it's applicable. On the housing side, we expect to see that there's a certain amount of due diligence in the background. You've built a wait list. You've had all the documentation to show, and that's all part of your application. So think about these criteria. So we can require you to repay the funds, and that has happened a few times, and it's not comfortable for us to be in that position to have to take the money back from anybody. We don't want to have delays because that impacts us with HUD. It can result in legal action on you at the local level if things are not done correctly. And again, there's a couple of communities out there that they're eligible, but there's situations where we may not be able to allow them to apply until some of these items that have occurred in the past have been addressed. So things to think about. You're going to be subject to an annual performance report moving forward. You've got a monthly status report that you're going to check in with your project manager that you'll do each month. Oops. There's other reporting. So MWBE, that is through our FIHO office. There's also Section 3. If you're not familiar with it, that's job opportunities for low and moderate income person. So if there's job creation as a result, not just economic development, but because of any other portion of this, again, the expectation is you're meeting the Section 3 where jobs are made available if they're created. Dave's Bacon, that's twice a year. If you expend more than $750,000 in federal funds, not just CDBG, but all federal funds, you're subject to single audit. You've got your citizen participation, so your public hearings, that's before the application and before you complete the project. There's a second public hearing. It's called your performance hearing. These are all steps that you have to address. There's uniform relocation. If your project is displacing anybody temporarily or permanently, you need to have a relocation plan and assistance set up. And then finally, the grant closeout at the back end. There's competitive bidding. You've got the request for proposals, RFQs. This is limited to engineering and architectural services only, nothing else. Any other professional services has to go through the request for proposal. And the invitation for bid is generally for construction. We have to follow 200 CFR, which is the new omnibus federal regulation. So everything's kind of been mushed into this new code. So it's under, everything falls under 200. Again, common issues, you hiring a consultant and you use the RFQ. We're going to say do it again. You don't advertise. There's federal clauses that are required. Piggybacking, which means hiring a you've got a prior contract with an engineer or consultant, and you just award this. If that initial consultation or the initial procurement was not done correctly, we can't allow you to do that. That again is subject to new procurement. And again, missing procurement methods where you just don't go through it and you just hire somebody. We can't do that either. You're responsible for tracking the funds. You're responsible for timely record keeping. And the internal controls. An example is that as you request the funds, you're signing the request for funds. Whoever signing that cannot also issue the check at the local level. It has to be two separate persons doing those actions. Key financial practices. Again, I don't want to get into this. I'm trying to skip. We've got all the notes here that we'll give to everybody. Again, monitoring and audits. So it's your single audit, but then also monitoring with us. Again, this is a cost incurred basis. So if we don't have the proper documentation, we're going to hold up your disbursement until we get everything that we need. If costs are ineligible, you can commingle with your joint account, but you have to be able to document the sources of everything in and out so that we can see the money coming in and out. Again, these are just things to be aware of. This takes a long time for some of these projects. I did one down in Otsego County. Substantial delays not because of, but we had to go through compliance with the Delaware River Basin Commission. Took 8 years to complete the project. But we got them through it. And we had to keep that project alive because if we pulled our funding, the basin was going to stop the review and they would have had to start all over again once they get the funding back in place. Yeah, these are just things chief elected is going to change, the clerks are going to change, the local officials are going to change, people are going to retire. So just be aware of this. Have a plan of succession in place for your projects so somebody can step in your place. Again, technical assistance. These guys, EFC is a great TA provider. We've got the CATS, which is the community assistance teams, RCAP. These are all great resources. Again, as you guys can see, I'll talk to you as much as I can. I pick up the phone, call me, and I'll walk you through any process that you'll need. So skip through that.
Yeah, great.
So for the folks online, thank you we're going to provide this to everybody again. It's trying to get back on schedule here. So again, all the notes and everything that will provide this to everybody. So you'll get everything that I was supposed to say that I already had cut this back an hour. So
We do have a backlog of questions
Yeah.
online if you're ready.
Yep.
And then we'll take questions from the room too. So Julie clarified that she was referencing the enhanced in-home services for the elderly,
Mhm.
which EISEP. And she said, if you have a plan to say bring laundry and associated plumbing upstairs so an individual can stay in their home, expenses must first cover any code issues identified in the home, and then anything left over can go towards the plumbing modifications. Would CDBG also require this for restore or access?
Again, it depends on the level of rehab. Generally speaking, if you're doing housing rehab under the CDBG, we're following the home methodology. So CDBG, again, one of the things we can do is I can just do a roof, I can just do a heating system, I can just do a single component, but what we want to do is take a comprehensive approach. So yeah, the home is going to have to be brought up to code, but there's multiple sources available. So through the restore program, the emergency repairs, or through the access, that's your baseline. And then you can build into that. You can leverage the other funding through a home or through CDBG, and you can put all of these together.
Great. Julie also asked, can you provide some examples of what a small, low-income rural town could use as cash match for community planning and TA funds?
So there is no cash match required anymore for the community planning.
Great.
So we had that for a while there was a 5% match that we had, and we ended that a couple of years ago. Exactly because of that point, because some of the smaller rural communities just did not have the finances available to them. And there's now also, we modified it. So we actually have an administrative allowance within the award, which we didn't have previously. So again, I think we're allowing up to 5% of the award for admin. Because again, there are reporting requirements with the community planning as well. So yeah, some changes to that, but yes, this should make that a little bit more flexible and easier for folks.
Great. Christine Quinlan asked, would a municipal solar project fit any of the programs available?
Yeah, we could do that through the public facilities. Again, or public infrastructure rather, sorry. So again, typically we think of infrastructure, it's water, sewer, and stormwater management. But again, it's Wi-Fi access is another activity, the solar. As long as we can show that the benefiting population is low income, then yeah, that's all activities that we can look at and consider.
Great. Julie also asked, is there training available for all of the required compliance components prior to applying for the award?
So we will do a application workshop I don't have the date yet. In the past, we've did one application for economic development. We did one for housing. We did one for infrastructure. And we pushed all that into one session this year. So that hasn't been announced yet, but we will be doing that. So again, if that doesn't fully answer your questions in terms of the application process, again, just email us. We'll get the contact info at the end of the slide. Pick up the phone, call me, call Scott, call Marilyn. Again, we'll help you out with whatever you need, whatever your questions might be.
Does the public infrastructure program cover initial design, or does that program only cover construction?
So the expectation again is if you're coming in under public facility or public infrastructure, that your preliminary engineering is completed when you're ready to apply. What we've got the allowance for is to take it from preliminary to final, because there's often regulatory approvals that you might need to get through to finalize things. Typically on the water and sewer side, it can take 6 to 9 months to submit your final plans and specs to DEC or DOH to get final approval. So again, the expectation is, again, you've got your preliminary in hand at application, but that's also the community assistance or the community planning money that's kind of your stepping stone, your first step to get started.
Great, this is a good question. Would a mural project to engage the creative economy and art entrepreneurs, excuse me, related to economic development to drive tourists to local businesses be eligible? There's a good pitch in that question.
It's a good pitch. I like the idea. Probably not, but you can do something like that through Main Street.
Okay.
So Main Street has got the public enhancements. So like the art projects, the murals, stuff like that, you can do that through Main Street.
Great. I have one more from online. What is the plan if the federal government defunds HUD as proposed in the current executive proposal? It's an easy one, right?
Real easy. So as I said at the beginning, the funding that we've got that we're putting out in the street for 2025 is our allocation for 2024 primarily. We've got recaptured funds. So again, total allocation that we're putting out in the street this year is around $72 million. There's 25 to $30 million, I think, in the CFA between public infrastructure, public facilities. We've got the community planning in there. There's the economic development, the housing, Scott's, the imminent prep program. So again, roughly $72 million in CDBG. To answer the question long term, I can't answer that because again, we don't know. I want to be very careful politically to not get myself or anybody else in trouble. What I can say is the CDBG program is very popular at the congressional level because it does hit a lot of local communities, not just in New York State, but across the country. There have been efforts in the past to zero out CDBG that have not been successful. My gut reaction is I would expect that for 2026, there probably is going to be some type of cut, but I don't know what extent, to be honest with you, but it's that we're waiting to see what what's going to happen. And I know at the state level, the state is starting to address some of these concerns, not just with CDBG, but with the loss of some of these other revenue streams from the federal with filling the state budget gap. So I think some of this will be picked up by the state, but I don't know to what extent.
Great. Do we have any questions in the room?
2 hours of information, no questions. Oh, Lisa's got a question.
Do sidewalks fit anywhere?
Yeah, so the question is, do sidewalks fit? Yes. So that is under public infrastructure. If it's part of the surface restoration, so you have to tear everything up and replace it. Yes, that's just part of the infrastructure. If it's a sidewalk is a standalone activity that falls under the public facility. Yep.
Thanks. Will public infrastructure funds be eligible for W-Quip match?
Yes. So, and again, this is why I encourage the consultation with the CATS community assistance teams for that, because they'll pull everybody together. Because you got to remember that with the QIP, which is the Water Quality Improvement Program, maybe you've got $1 million award and you bring in CDBG funds. CDBG is going to reduce every dollar of CDBG that you bring to the table under QIP, you're going to lose 25 cents on the dollar. It's the QIP and water infrastructure improvement. Those awards are based on your net cost. So that's what we have to look at. So they will award you up to the maximum because that's what the anticipated net cost is. The amount of money that you're going to have to go into debt for is what they look at. So if that net cost, your net long-term indebtedness is going to be reduced, your WIA or QIP awards will also be reduced accordingly. Lisa?
Cost for capital project increased by double.
Yep.
It was like a $9 million project and now it's up to 21 estimated. Our bids came in. Could we apply for CDBG? We have quite a few grants and loans already.
Yeah, so again, it's what I would do is get I think I've got it embedded in here, or we can get it to you with that link for the community assistance. It's a quick online, it's very basic information. Just fill in the basic information, submit it. They'll do all the coordination. That's all you have to do is just fill this in, your name, contact information, and quick description of the project. EFC does all the coordination to pull all the funders together on a phone call.
Which we have here.
Yeah, yeah. So again, we'll talk to you about that. And then again, if you've got that big of a gap, again, CDBG is obviously a choice for you, but we have to see that you're otherwise fully funded. And that's the obstacle there is, going back to the catch, because again, I think under QIP and WIA, once that award is made, they'll adjust it down, but they won't increase it. So we have to go back and see if you've got EFC or other funding, we have to see if but we have to go back to them to see if if they've got the ability to increase any of those awards to help fill that gap. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice?
How many can we apply for?
So again, it's a good, so the question is, how many grants can you apply for? So in the past, and I talked back 20 years ago when I started with the state, you were allowed to submit one application per year. We've revised it now, so you can submit a housing application. You can submit an application for up to $2 million under public infrastructure. You can submit an application for up to $1 million under public facilities, and you can submit under the economic development for that. So you can do all of those in a current year without going against yourself.
We have another one from Julie. Could we apply for CDBG for costs for a water project not awarded through NBRC Catalyst to reduce resident expenses who are low income?
Yes. So NBRC is the Northern Border Regional Commission. So there's a sister agency to that. It's the Appalachian Regional Commission. I like NBRC. If you're not familiar with it, it's up to $500,000 that can be awarded through that. But yes, as long as the project has not started, and typically it's NBRC requires a partner in that because they're match. So there's probably other funding in there, but yes, there's no prohibitions. You can use CDBG to match any other funding that you have made available to you. It's up to those other funding sources to object to using CDBG if they don't allow it. Otherwise, we have no restrictions on what you can mix or match with CDBG. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry for we're supposed to be a 15-minute break in between there, and I apologize for having to skip through that. So for the folks in line, what time is it now? So what time do you want to start back? this is where we got a little flexible. We had to get creative because I was way over time with my original slides.
12:45.
Okay, yeah, so for everybody online, we're gonna come back at 12:45. Hopefully, you folks online will continue to participate. I think Jess has some trivia for everybody to keep you entertained. And yeah, so folks in the room, I think lunch is next door.
Yes, and I've been told it's ready.
Uh,
Here.
Yep, so lunch is ready, and feel free to ask me with questions while we're on break. So just quick note for everybody. So once we come back from lunch, there's an hour left. We're going to be hearing from Cassandra Buell with Lewis County, Mike Worsey with Jefferson County, and then Jess will do some technical assistance stuff with this EFC, the Environmental Finance Center. So that's the second session, and we'll wrap some things up. So I think it's a good way to end the day. So hang tight, and we'll see you back here at 12:45.
Thank you.
All right, great. We're going to get started again. We have a series of case studies. Our first is Cassandra Buell who is the Lewis County Director of Planning and Community Development.
Thank you. It's interesting being able to see everybody in the room, but not being able to see everybody in a Zoom and all of the participants. So my name is Cassandra Buell. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for Lewis County. We have grown our CDBG access over the last 5-6 years, Charlie. Prior to me taking over as director, we really focused on housing. We likely submitted maybe one application alongside our nonprofit housing agency, Snowbelt Housing, Inc., maybe once every funding round. Sometimes once every 2 years. So we have expanded our footprint in Charlie's world, and I hope he's happy to have us because we've made ourselves pretty comfortable with CDBG. But I will say, like everybody in the room who's just kind of trying to grasp the administrative portion of it, very overwhelming in the beginning. Felt like I was drowning with the first bit of admin, but I think if you really dig into some of the really simple best practices that we were able to instate from the get-go in early 2020, which, that was a fun year. We were able to really get organized and make sure that we were hopefully one of the shining stars for the HCR group to deal with when it comes to CDBG. So just getting started, follow the funding. We are constantly in the planning department looking at notices. We're connecting with our HCR reps. These particular groups working sessions are wonderful because, I consider myself to be pretty up and up on CDBG programs and the HCR world, but I, unfortunately for Charlie, have like 3 other programs that we're looking to kind of dig into with Charlie to see how we can work on that and expand that. Definitely connect with his team. Their team is remarkable. They will help you from the application phase throughout the development. And even the contract period, it's overwhelming if you don't know what you don't know, but they're there to hold your hand through the procurement process. They have wonderful guidance documents online. It's all readily available. Something that you should dig into, or I recommend, in your free time, because who has free time, but in any free time that you have, take a look at their archives of previously awarded projects and what program that project was awarded under. I think it's gonna, if you're anyone like us, our planning department has a rolling list of all the projects, and we're just trying to figure out what funding connects to each project. And a couple of the projects, one of them is going to be the housing needs assessment and market analysis that I will get to. that was stimulated when we saw that another community used CDBG funding for that. We knew we had to do it. We just didn't know what funding source we could use to do it. And just looking at those archives really stimulated our interest and prompted some phone calls to HCR. So definitely look at historical NOFAs to kind of get a context of what the parameters, what the guidelines will be. They will change. They have changed over the years, and I'm sure they will change in the coming years, but they give a really good foundation of what you should expect to see on the next funding round. But I, for one, am really happy to see some open application periods for the programs specifically for public facilities and community planning. Watch the training webinars. I think that there was a question before Charlie wrapped up for lunch about training. Tons of training opportunities from administration to what program availability is out there, financial management, environmental. I can't say enough things about environmental. As planners, we work a lot with that. We work a lot with the consultants who handle environmental. You will look at the NEPA and the seekers and likely feel a bit overwhelmed, but they take you through the process step by step. And again, those HCR reps are gold, really. And they have these wonderful office hours where you can chime in and ask questions, whether it be about existing programs, an existing grant you have, or something maybe that you're looking to connect with funding on. Get organized early. I come from a manufacturing background. I have an MBA, so I am all about SOPs, standard operating procedures. I immediately applied this when I took over for director. I had no history with working with CDBG. We really depended a lot on our housing entity, Snowbelt Housing Inc., to take care of a lot of the nuts and bolts of everything. But when you take over projects like this and you're looking to expand them, you really need to understand how they work, what you're responsible for, because Lewis County, we are the ones signing the contract. Snowbelt Housing is a subrecipient. They're liable, but we're the first ones that Charlie's going to call and say, okay, now you owe, I can't give you reimbursement for this funding. When we entrusted our subrecipient, we've never had that happen, but I think Charlie has referenced a few cases where that has happened. So definitely create SOPs. I am more than willing to share my SOPs that we've created in-house for our office. And I believe the presenter's contact information maybe will be shared with everybody. So please feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to share those with everybody. Something that I've learned along the way, trial and error, the first public hearing. So I don't know how layered everybody else's municipal process is. CDBG, as Charlie had said, is only available to municipalities. We can work with nonprofits through subrecipient agreement, but there is a first public hearing requirement. So my first year, we had waited for the CFA to be announced, right? So the CFA is announced mid-May. And anybody who knows the process of a public hearing, you have to have a resolution to set a public hearing, and then you hold the public hearing. That could take 2 to 3 months all in itself, depending on where we hit on our timelines of our board meetings. So I called Charlie and Scott out of frustration several times. Like, how do we make this better? Like, how do we make this easier so I'm not flying by the seat of my pants and trying to put together an application and make sure that we are abiding by the public involvement process? And something that we came up with was holding the first public hearing at our organizational meeting in January. So at that point, the full gamut, we put in our resolution that, we're looking for input from the public on applying for microenterprise, small business, housing, public infrastructure, public facility. And we put it out there. What do you want? What does the public want? Would they be behind us on a project like this? And that way your first public hearing is out of the way. No stress, no mess. You have that checked off. So when the chaos of CFAs start, that's one less thing you have to worry about. So that's just a little tidbit of knowledge to hopefully help get through that grant application process. We internally, because we're planners, have created a calendar with CDBG reminders, constant CDBG reminders, which is it makes it a lot less overwhelming. And the HCR staff, they'll check in with you. It's not, if you miss like a check-in with them, but they do keep you on monthly updates. They want to know, like Charlie alluded to, they want to make sure that the project is progressing. They want to make sure that you're compliant. They definitely want to avoid any issues where you're, running into the non-compliant realm. You're crossing that line, but you don't know it until it's too late. So they really do that to keep you on track. But it's always helpful to be really proactive, get that information together and send that consistently to your rep at HCR. And then formal subrecipient monitoring. I mean, we usually August is our month for monitoring a lot of our subrecipients. Like I had said, we apply for housing funds, but we partner with our local housing entity, Snowball Housing Inc., and we have to monitor them. We do a whole program review on them. How are they identifying eligibility? Is the paperwork all up to snuff? Because again, we're required to comply with the grant. If they don't comply with it, we may have an issue with them, but that's not going to stop the state from kind of going back on us saying that we're not compliant with our grant agreement. So just really important to keep on top of that subrecipient monitoring. And something I learned from the get-go when I took over is I think 2020, we missed a subrecipient monitoring. It ended up, when you close out the grant, it ended up in a finding, which is a really big deal to planners. We like everything to be perfect. Sometimes you fall just short. So I think when we miss that, you'll never miss it again because you want to make sure that you're on the up and up on that. But generally, we've never had a problem with Snowball. We're lucky that they're pretty much on top of it. I mentioned attending the office hours. I think that they do it monthly. Charlie, do you guys? Yeah.
It's open. There's no pre-registration. It's just open all the time.
It's open all the time. No pre-registration. Highly recommend that. Like I said, you can ask questions about existing grant funds, existing programs, new grant funds, or maybe you want to get started and you want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. It's really a great opportunity for you all to attend that. And then keep updated on fair housing. That is a requirement among all of the other administrative requirements to enter into contract. Make sure you have your fair housing plan in place. So actually we've come a long way with our fair housing. We have a fair housing task force. We do a fair housing proclamation and fair housing month in April. We hold fair housing training. The requirements of the CDBG funding have evolved us and really strengthened our fair housing presence in Lewis County. Okay, so the first project that I personally applied for without any, subrecipient, working with a subrecipient, was the community planning grant. So in 2021, we submitted, or maybe it was late 2020, we submitted an application under the community planning grant for a housing needs assessment and market analysis. Now, that is not my brilliant idea. That was something that I found on a previous award that I was able to find, and I feel like maybe it was Livingston County, but I was able to find their draft, their project. They have a lovely mapper. If you find yourself aligned with maybe another similar county or municipalities, same size, same kind of demographics. And then I was able to pull their RFPs and their bid. Like once you get rolling on that, you're really able to, okay, I think we can do this housing needs assessment. They did it. We want a very similar outcome. Fair Housing Task Force was identified as a need before we submitted this community planning grant. And that's what really prompted me to look into it, because our Fair Housing Task Force had identified it was a need. We need to know how much housing there was. And that was 2020, 2021. So we all knew that we had a problem, right? But all right, how do we solve it? We need a plan before we can start implementation. So that's when we submitted the application for the housing needs assessment. We completed it in 2022. And that housing needs assessment had identified that we needed more senior housing and market rate housing, which is great. And it even broke it down into what type of housing we needed, how much we needed, and at what point we should have it implemented by. And we were able to implement a housing hub dashboard on our website, which we've gotten calls from other counties, has been really great on ways that they would like to track their housing stock. And better yet, it was used to attract developers. And it has laid the groundwork for all of our reuse studies. I think Charlie had mentioned that they have a $25 million grant for a really small community he thought was in the North Country. I can assure you it was in the North Country. It's in Glenfield, which is just a hamlet in the tiny community of town of Martinsburg. That project was catapulted because of this housing needs assessment and market analysis. We used that as part of our reuse study, which attracted a developer, Rochester Cornerstone Group, to the project through an RFEI, or request for expressions of interest process that we worked with Naturally Lewis, who is our local economic development agency. All those partnerships came together, but this document was one of the biggest reasons why they took that gamble, because we already identified that we had the need and how much we needed to get there. So I can't say enough great things. That was a $50,000 grant. At that point, it was a 5% match, but like Charlie had mentioned, there's no more match anymore. So really you have nothing to lose. So I highly recommend that. The CARES Act Housing Rehab Project. This was in partnership with our local housing authority, Snowbelt Housing Inc. They have a apartment complex. It's a senior living facility that was in need of desperate work. You name it, smoke alarms, generators, siding, roof. So when the CARES Act, which was really just a shot in the arm, it's not available anymore. When that became available, we jumped on it because we knew that we had to get that project funded somehow, some way. It's for a 15 low moderate income senior citizen units. The scope included health and safety improvements. So like I had said, smoke alarms, fire extinguishers. There was a generator, the siding was replaced, the roof was replaced. And then we had some funding left over. Ironically enough, in 2020. And we were able to work in some sidewalk and ADA accessibility improvements. And we supplemented this with local Win Denmark, which is a local foundation funding, and Snowbelt Housing General Funds. And then here's some pictures of the aerial view of that post project. And like I said, we came in under budget. We had to deobligate some funds on that one. Wasn't much, but we were able to deobligate there. Infrastructure and public facility. I can't say enough good things about this. With the CARES Act funding, the county also applied for broadband expansion in specific census tracts that did meet that LMI requirement. And in those census tracts were county-owned towers that we already use for 911 services. So we were able to quickly work in this application, submit, I think it was like $747,000 to deploy broadband expansion through fixed wireless. And there's also water and sewer, sidewalks. We've applied for the sidewalk grant. We tried to. And another best practice, make sure your income survey is less than 5 years old. I learned that one the hard way too. After you go through the whole application, and Charlie called me, I'm sure he was happy he was just on the phone and not in person. He's like, oh, I couldn't review your application because it was like a month expired. So just beyond that, if you know that you're going to be looking for CDBG funds, make sure that that income survey is updated. And if not, that you work that into your timeline. Flood control and stormwater drainage, that's something that we are looking at. In this next round, we've had some pretty big doozies last summer that we're really trying to pull all of the funding mechanisms together to mitigate with stormwater. And then neighborhood facilities, which is an exciting aspect for planners because this funding is not typically available through other means. So those libraries, childcare centers, recreational facilities, parks and playgrounds, nursing homes, get with Charlie. If you think maybe, and the way you read the NOFA, maybe you think, no, it's not eligible, call them. They'll let you know and they'll walk through the project with you. And then they've recently deployed a pre-application process, right, Charlie, which has really helped a lot of that. So you don't get to the submission of an application phase and it's in an eligible project. That's already vetted before you submit the application. Another project, a recent project from our last, it was a mobile home replacement program now called the Manufactured Housing Replacement Program. Project here that is pictured. The homeowners were living in this mobile home that was pretty drafty. The roof had a lot of issues. The ceiling panels were sagging, the flooring was buckling, and obviously the family was in a situation where they needed to make those repairs to replace their home sooner than later, or they would have to face another lovely North Country winter up in Lewis County. So this, the owners were able to qualify for this program and they gave us the utmost patience because in the middle of this, there was an the mobile home manufacturer, one of the few mobile home manufacturers that are left, had a family issue that delayed our ability to purchase the actual mobile home for quite a while, manufactured home for quite a while. So there was some delays and challenges with that. The original contractor had passed away, and then we coordinated with the new contractor to complete the project. When Charlie had talked about finding temporary accommodations in this instance, we were pretty creative, or I shouldn't say we, Snowbout was pretty creative. They worked with an Airbnb, and then they housed all of their belongings in a storage unit. But like Charlie had said, there's funding that will cover those costs. And of course, the outcome was a very happy resident of Lewis County, and they're deeply grateful, which most times that is the case. You will run into a couple occurrences where nothing works out perfectly, despite how much planning you put into it, but stick with them because ultimately we need everybody in safe housing. So that's that program. Looks like that's duplicate. Here's the before and after of the McNeil apartments that I was talking about that we funded with CARES Act. Here's the roof before, and then here's the roof after. And then you can see in these pictures, it was mid-project because the siding is not yet complete. Here's the siding before, obviously needed a bunch of TLC, and there's the siding after. And now I am going to tee it off to Jefferson County, unless anybody has any questions for Lewis County. Did I come in under 15 minutes? Yes.
We do have one question that came in online. It might be for you, Charlie. It's if our village has solidified a loan rate with USDA for a ladder truck that is currently ordered, are we still eligible to apply for a CDBG grant for it?
Unfortunately, no. You have to come to us for the assistance prior to taking any action. So if they had come in to us before they placed the order, we would have been able to assist them. And that's again is what the city of Portland did. They came in, they applied. Once they were awarded funding, they were able to go through the procurement process to order the truck and incur the cost.
I think a lot of that, Charlie, goes back to the procurement standards of the CDBG program, right? So it's very important to pull in your purchasing director if you have one, or whoever's handling the procurement, because it's very important that you catch those things in the very beginning. Even, 3 to 4 weeks. I just ran into a project that we're working on with vacant property clearance program where the newspaper posted it slightly less than 3 weeks. That'll result in the finding. But even those things, just make sure that you're on the timeline and your contracts are inclusive of all of the CDBG language.
Right. So we do follow the federal procurement guidelines. It's 200 CFR. Don't ask me the specific. I used to know the old one. But we look at the most restrictive. So if the federal procurement is the most restrictive, we look at that. Then we come down to the local level. If your county, city, town, village has more restrictive procurement policies, then that's what you have to follow down to that level. But again, just look at that. Procurement is a big issue. Just make sure you're taking care of it before you incur any costs.
I'll turn it over to Mike Borsey now.
Okay, well, yeah, my name is Michael Borsey. I'm the director of the Jefferson County Planning Department. And I'll say, I think Cassie's going to be a hard act to follow here. Luckily, she had shared her slide presentation beforehand, so I had an idea what she was doing. So I kind of pivoted a little and thought that I would just talk about the housing programs that Jefferson County has. And we have two. We have the CDBG program through Charlie's office. And then as he referred to in his presentation, HUD has a home funding, which goes to the states, and the states can then go down to local municipalities. But for Jefferson County with the home program, we went a little different way, and I'll get to that. But as far as CDBG, went the wrong way. It's the down button. For the past 20 years, Jefferson County has actually received 18 housing awards from the OCR. With that, we've been able to assist 396 housing units in the county, and we received $13 million. So, it's been a really great program for Jefferson County. And one thing I'd like to add to with what Cassie talked about, that Charlie's office is really great to work with. The people are approachable. While going through Charlie's presentation earlier, it can seem like a daunting task to consider applying for these funds. But, like Cassie talked about, talk to Charlie's staff. They'll help you out. They'll get you started. They'll get you on the right path so you can, put in an application and hopefully receive fundings for that, for your programs. And you can see the map on the side. Our CDBG program covers all Jefferson County outside the city of Watertown, because as Charlie mentioned, the city of Watertown is an entitlement community. So you can see that it is spread all across Jefferson County, except for a little in the northeastern section, but that's Fort Drum military complex. So we obviously, would not do any projects on there. As far as how our program is set up for CDBG, we go through an RFP process to get a CDBG housing grant consultant. The awards are for a 3-year period, and that consultant assists the county with developing our housing application for the CDBG program. And then if awarded, that consultant will continue on and assist us with the grant administration. The way we've done it is when we do receive an award, the consultant then will actually hire a local housing agency. And the housing agency is the one that works with the applicants, works with the contractors, and there's a process where the county reviews the projects, and we approve the projects to move forward. As far as the consultant that we have, they do program development activities. He's established files and records with our program. He assists with the environmental review process, prepares the program guidelines. And like I said, he hires a housing agency that handles the daily administration of the program. And in general, he gives us advice with the CDBG program. Let me see. And he also with the reports, he works with us on the reports that are required. So he also keeps us in line and when things are due that we have to do. Like I said, the local housing agency that we have, that we utilize, I should say, they work with the applicants. They work with the applicants to complete the forms. They assess their eligibility, collects all that information. And, they put projects, out to bid. And so then they come back with a whole project file. And then we have a meeting with the county project review committee. And we sit down, we talk to them about the project. They explain what needs to be done with the house, and we approve it. And then the housing agency then, moves on. Has them sign the contracts between the applicant, the homeowner, and the contractor. And they have staff that, goes out and reviews all the work, inspects all the work and brings them through the process. They submit draws to the county and, we process that. We pay the contractors directly and we pay obviously the consultant, directly. And then this is just an example, typical work scope that we receive. And what the common types of work that we see is, roofing and windows and doors, and then there's always, it seems, water issues inside, the bathroom has issues. We have to replace, equipment in the bathroom. And yeah, there's be a myriad of items that are dealt with through the CDBG program. That's worked out, like I said, that's worked out great for Jefferson County. And while the planning department hasn't worked directly in a long time with local municipalities to assist them if they wanted to apply for CDBG funds, that is a possibility with, as long as we have available staff time to do that. When I believe our first two years that we did this program, we actually worked with a local housing agency to do home buyer programs. And that was set up a little differently. And I believe what happened was we were hearing from the housing agencies that rehab was a much larger need in the county. So then we pivoted and, looked at just doing home owner occupied rehab, and we switched to that. And before I got directly involved with the CDBG program at the county, we developed this process with, having a housing consultant and hiring that to come in and sort of guide us through this process. And then, like I said, it's been working for 20 years for us. Our other big housing program is the home program, which is a little, I think a little unique. In my understanding is that we're the largest consortium possibly in the country, just size wise. So what it is, there's the North Country Home Consortium, which is made up of St. Lawrence County, Jefferson County, and Lewis County. Back in 1994, the three counties got together, and neither of them, none of the counties could qualify as an entitlement community, but there was an opportunity if the three counties came together, formed a consortium, they now become a entitlement community for HUD home funds, which means every year we're guaranteed to receive some amount of funds. Currently there's 110 municipalities in the three counties, and we spent last year going through a reauthorization process. And as part of that process, we actually brought in the last 7 municipalities in the three counties. So we have 100% coverage for the three counties. All of the municipalities and the counties are eligible for funding through the home program. Jefferson County, I think maybe we got the short straw, but we became the lead county, which means all the administrative functions fall on us for this. And that's actually been fine. There's a home administrative board that we have that has 3 members from each one of the counties, and we meet on an annual basis to approve projects for that funding year. Now, CDBG program, we hire a consultant who hires a local housing agency, and they assist us with running this program. Our home program's a little different. I think Cassie mentioned DANK, the Development Authority of the North Country. With the home program, DANK is a subrecipient with the county. And so DANK is the one that the county utilizes, the consortium utilizes to do, like I say, a lot of the heavy lifting with this program. So in this case, DANK works with the local housing agencies in all 3 of the counties. And DANK puts together RFP beginning of the year that we put out to all the housing agencies and say, okay, we're estimating we're going to get $800,000 this year. You know, please submit applications, and that can be owner occupied rehab, home buyer program, or rental rehab. And we've been lucky. We consistently get enough projects in, or applications in, for projects for the home program. I won't go through the whole list, but you can see DANK's list is a lot bigger than Jefferson County's list, which is good from my point of view. In this instance, the county doesn't pay the contractors. We pay our subrecipient DANK, and then DANK passes the money through to the local housing agencies, and they pay the different contractors directly. So it's, 2 major housing programs. Let me see. And here we've been doing this for 31 years. Over $34 million has been brought in. We've assisted just over 2,000 housing units, again, in the 3-county period. And you can see that, the projects have been spread out amongst the 3 counties pretty well. So 2 different housing programs and sort of 2 different approaches that the county has taken with each one of them. And I will say, since I became director and a lot more involved in both of these programs than I was previously, they both are, even though they're different, they're both running pretty well with this. The last thing, just because I was on a kick with housing programs, is ARP funds. Every municipality out there is familiar with the American Rescue Plan funds. The federal government decided with the home program that they were going to funnel ARP funds into that. So any entitlement community for home funds received money. We received just under $3 million back in 2021. These funds target homeless people in imminent risk of homelessness. And again, I won't go through this whole list. So again, because this was a home program, we partnered with DANK again and had them involved. And again, they did the heavy lifting with developing the allocation plan for this, with talking with all of the local agencies that deal with homeless people to come together and discuss what was needed. What came out of this was the 3 construction projects, which again, we received these funds in 2021, and this year, actually late last fall, we actually had construction start on these projects. The Neighbors of Watertown is in the process of building an apartment building in the city of Watertown, which will be 63 units. I don't have off the top of my head, but those units are divided between, low income units and some homeless units. The DePaul company is building a apartment complex on Commerce Drive in the city of Watertown, which is 120 units, which again is going to be made up of assisting different types of people, to include the homeless veterans on there. And their supportive services are actually built in with some of these projects. We did up in St. Lawrence County, in the town of Oswegatchie, which is just outside the city of Ogdensburg. The step-by-step up there is building 10 units. They're like not tiny houses, but they're the smaller type housing units up there. Again, it's for the people that are homeless or an imminent risk of homelessness. And the remaining amount of funds went to for supportive services in the three counties, where the construction projects were in St. Lawrence and Jefferson County, but some supportive service funds did go to Lewis County to snowbelt housing down there. So we were able to spread the funds again amongst the three counties in there. So that's all I have. If there's anyone has any questions? Okay.
All right, I get to go next because Charlie said if we host it, I could talk. I'll be presenting with my colleague, Callista Albring. I introduced myself earlier, but I am Jess Eckerlin, and I'm here, program assistant at the Environmental Finance Center. As Charlie mentioned a couple times today, we provide technical assistance services, and we'll go through exactly what that is. Well, first we got to do a quick status check because it's been a very long day. It's a lot, right? It's a lot. He's a lot. We're a lot. It's all a lot. So how are we feeling? I think I'm top left. How about you guys? Yeah. You're like, oh, that's great. But if you think about it, if you look at it, kind of zoomed out, Charlie went over the what and the why and the how, and then we had two amazing case studies. Thank you both for traveling here today to present as success stories that you really can navigate these really difficult funding opportunities. And then what Callista and I are going to talk about is how we can help you do that at no cost to you. All right, so a little bit about who we are. As I mentioned, we're the SU Environmental Finance Center. We enhance the managerial and financial capacity of regional and local governments. All that means is that we will help you through this process. And one thing I do have to mention, because it's really helpful, is that we are part of the Environmental Finance Center Network. So we are a national organization. We have a center in each of the EPA regions. So at our center, we serve EPA Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. But because we are part of this huge network, we're able to pull resources and expertise and technical capacity from the entire country. So it's not just our little office. We can pull from hundreds of people within our network to help you. And then I want to keep zooming out a little bit of why would you even need technical assistance? Like, why are we even here? Why do we exist? And if you look at it, since 1977 to 2017, federal funding for infrastructure has dropped 31%. I mean, that's probably not news to you who are on attending the training today. But as you know, federal funding is crucial for funding infrastructure. And we've seen that consistent decline in that federal funding become available. But some of you might be like, well, I don't know if that's true because I've heard of a lot of funding become available recently. And you're right. Between the last couple of years, we had the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, and that was really centered around COVID funding. And then came the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or BILL. And yeah, that invested $50 billion for water infrastructure through the EPA, although a lot of that was loans and not direct grants. And we do have the Inflation Reduction Act. So we have the IRA. So yes, overall, we're seeing a consistent decline in the availability of federal funding, but there has been these programs which boosted it back up. But now there's bad news again. So even with these increases in federal funding, this study by McKinsey and Company showed that there will still be a 22% shortfall of necessary capital needed for long-term infrastructure sustainability. So even with that boost of funding, it's still not going to be enough. And not only that, but the funding gap will likely persist without improving local capacity. So sure, maybe you have money to construct a new building or for engineering, but you don't have money for enhanced maintenance and operations. You don't have money to put towards better asset management or workforce planning or succession planning or technology upgrades. I mean, what about cybersecurity or climate readiness? There's still a lot of different demands for funding that won't be met by that. So enter us, technical assistants. It's a pretty good setup, right? So what is technical assistance? So if we start at the bottom of this triangle, there's examples of technical assistance providers. And I know Charlie gave a lot of examples in his presentation today. There's us, but there's also the Environmental Facilities Corporation, their CAT team, and they do incredible work. There's Rural Water, NYS, and then I have to give a shout out to Rural Community Assistant Partnerships. They were attending our training virtually today, our CAP. We work closely with them. One thing to keep in mind is we provide our services at no cost. So we're not competing with any of these other technical assistance providers, meaning if we can't answer your question, we'll find someone who can help you. And then moving up, who are the technical assistance providers? Well, there's nonprofits, industry associations. As Charlie mentioned, there's several state agencies that offer technical assistance. Planning and development organizations, there's a lot of different people who can help you. And we do a lot of different things. We'll give specific examples of technical assistance later in our presentation, but we can help you with planning and evaluation, funding and financial support. The main thing we're focusing on today is because the impetus is on you to fill that funding gap that I mentioned at the top of the talk. And to do that, you really have to create a funding strategy, right? You're no longer getting money from one source. You usually have to figure out, we like to call it weaving a funding quilt. So you have to figure out which sources of funding that you'll get and how they'll work together. So it's really creating that strategy where technical assistance can be so important in this process. And it's free and it's everywhere. So this is a little bit about how our EFC approach is. We always start the relationship by just listening, just taking the time to sit down and really understand where you are in the process, what the feel is for the funding projects, what your experience has been in the past. And as I mentioned before, we will connect you with the right people. So if we don't have the answer, we will absolutely find someone who does. We'll help you assess different situations. We'll help review contracts. We'll help you look at pros and cons of different funding programs. We'll help you design the work plan. We'll help you with outreach materials. We'll help you get public support for your project. And then we can help you also at the implementation stage as well. And this slide, this is really focused on the state revolving fund. So this is really SRF focused. But what I want to show here is that we offer a continuum of services. And that goes back to what I was just talking about, that we have the process where we can start at the very beginning planning phases of like, I think in a couple of years, we'll need to replace this infrastructure. And then bring you all the way through the planning and assessment to project development. We have a technical specialist working for us now. We're very excited. We have our own engineer here at the EFC, which if you think about it is a huge bonus because we can have an engineer actually review your designs or give you input. Because engineers are expensive, right? Yeah. We can help you with funding and financing. Project that I am really passionate about is we hold funding roundtables, where we host an event like this, but I bring in at least 7 state and federal funders. They present on their programs, and then we hold space at the end of that for you to ask questions. And that is a really great place to start if you think about it. If you need to learn about funding, you get an overview of every program available, and then you can be like, all right, well, I need a sidewalk. And then everyone says, go to Charlie. And as I mentioned, we can help you all the way through the process to project construction and management. But there is a catch. The catch is the reason that you probably need technical assistance, or just because you're a human today, you don't have a ton of time, right? And you need to invest the time in us to get us brought up to speed and to get us to understand exactly what your needs are and how we can help. So you need to make that investment in us before we can make that investment in you. So that's just our disclaimer that it will take a good amount of your time. but that we are happy to help. And I'm going to call up Callista, and she's going to give you some great examples of our technical assistance projects.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Callista Albring. I'm a project assistant here at the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And some of what I've been doing and really enjoying is working with rural communities by drafting cost share waiver letters and navigating grants.gov. So as Jess said, I will now go over the water TA menu. So like any good meal, we're going to start with the appetizers, which are short-term projects where we would take something small off your plate with limited time investment, such as meeting facilitation, visioning sessions, and outreach materials. Now, an example of a water TA project appetizer or a fast-paced project is we helped a nation understand the technical nature of their project. In this case, it was supporting the nation's consulting process and rights to consultation. We were able to work quickly and meet an immediate need they had. And we've been able to play this role several times, allowing them to make well-informed decisions. Now, for the water TA entree, these require a longer time commitment and address complex challenges and community goals. They can involve capital improvement, community engagement, and project development. An example of a more intensive TA project is looking to solve a community challenge and identify its root cause. We helped the New England town of Mansfield to assess organizational capacity. This project lasted about 8 months, which is why it's considered an entree. There was only one full-time staff that was struggling to prioritize across many plans and initiatives that she was responsible for. She needed help with prioritization and tools to communicate how she was managing her work. So we were able to inventory all of her initiatives. And as you can see on the slide here, we found that she was responsible for 145 action items, which is quite a lot for one person. So as a result of this project, the town promoted this employee and funded several supporting staff positions. Now for the desserts on the water TA menu, these are additional services that make your experience better and build your team's capacity. This can include professional development or staff training. The water TA dessert is an additional resource that doesn't entirely solve the issue, but it does help sweeten the process. We worked with a lake association and gave them free design and outreach materials. In this case, we printed yard signs and helped illustrate the connection between clean water and healthy septic systems. This didn't entirely solve their funding problems, but it did help generate public support and awareness. As Charlie mentioned previously, the best strategy for funding is co-funding. State and federal funding agencies communicate and collaborate on funding approaches for water infrastructure projects. So if you are open and communicative with the funders, they will help you develop your funding strategies. Charlie talked a lot about different funding opportunities today, and we wanted to clarify again that our technical assistance does have limitations, but don't hesitate to reach out because we're here to help. And if we can't help you, we know someone who can. Oh. Well, our thank you slide here, but that's all we have for today. And if you have any questions, there are technical assistance cards on the front desk that have all of our contact information.
I do have a question from the chat from Julie Aldrich again. Would CDBG help with snow plows or other DOT vehicles since they help maintain the roads, aka public safety, though not technically an emergency vehicle?
Fortunately, no. It's really part of the routine maintenance of the municipality. There is funding, I believe, through USGA. There are community facilities, I think, offers assistance for that. And I believe also, not 100%, but I think the Dorm Authority, DESNY, I think those are both going to be loans to the municipalities. But I think those are your two best options for something like that. Or I'm not sure if CHIPS funding allows you to access that, or if that has to go directly into the road maintenance. So we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, but there's part of what I love about this job is I can make it. Jess knows I'm a great storyteller. There's some personal connections, and you have to, with all of this that you do, there's personal connections. My network of friends continues to grow. I want to point out one thing. So years ago, we used to go up to this place in Blue Mountain Lake called Minerbrook, and hopefully we can convince Melissa to start that next year. So it was a great opportunity, but years ago we brought in, it just is an example of what EFC does. So who was the woman from New Mexico that we brought in? Yes, Sarah Diefendorf. She was fantastic. So she talked about the city of Albuquerque, and this is like classic example. So the city of Albuquerque wanted to replace their water system. And I said, here's our plan. Here's our oldest pipes, and this is where we're going to start. We're like, no, they went out, they assisted. And it's like where they actually had the most problems was not in the oldest part of the system. It was actually in one of the newer parts of the system that had been installed in the 60s. So it's just, there's stuff like this that EFC does. I don't know if you guys still offer this, but you usually have that great dashboard for rate setting. So there's another fantastic tool. And I don't want to mention the mayor by name because he's not in the room here, and I know he would talk about it, but we had a mayor from Schoharie County. The co-founders are going out and talk to him, and their rates were just like woefully. They hadn't raised rates, I think, in almost 30 years for the water. It was water, so I forget what it was. And we told the mayor, it's like, you really need to fix your rates and then come back and see us. And most mayors are like, no, that's political suicide. I'm not going to do that. The guy went out, raised rates, doubled them the next year, and continued to get reelected for a couple of times. So it's like, it's not the end of the world. But again, you guys were a great asset for them to do this. But there's also the personal side of the program. Cash, you kind of touched on this with the manufactured home that you replaced. And this is going to stay with me probably the rest of my life. So back in the days when I was a consultant, I was working up in Warren County, and we had this wonderful little old lady. Her name was Ida Coles. She was an absolute sweetheart. I loved working with her. And she was actually, part of my job at that point was to go through the house. She'd been determined, she applied. She qualified, and name came up on the wait list. So I went out and did the inspection with her, and we were going to do pretty extensive work. And it was the typical of the windows, the roof, new heating system, stuff like this. And when I went through everything with her, she did sit down, she started crying. And I was like, Ida, she goes, I don't deserve this. She said, there's somebody else that's more deserving of this than me. And I was like, no. I said, you're deserving. I said, you have worked hard. And it's those personal connections. So it's that little piece of that. And there's a lot of instances like this that I've experienced over the last 25, 30 years. But that one, with her, that sticks with you. And that's really part of what drives me with this is, I just turned 60. I worked for Sears back in the 80s. I worked for Holiday Inn. I worked for Marriott, worked for a pharmacy for a short time. And I've been here with the state. I can't tell you how much satisfaction I get out of this job. I love doing what I do. I'm not one of those people, it's like, oh, I gotta go to the office. It's like, no, it's like, I'm working from home right now. So our office is currently under construction. So they kicked us out. They're going floor by floor. So I've been home since the end of March. I'm like, can't wait to get back here in a couple of weeks. But it's like, a lot of times when I'm home, my official workday is 8 to 4, but it's not surprising to get an email from me at 6 o'clock in the morning, or to get something from me. I was working up until about 11 o'clock last night because I didn't have any, but I was in the hotel room last night. Nobody was there to bug me or tell me to go to bed. So it's part of the job, and it's part of what I enjoy doing. I enjoy really working with all of you. And it's just, we've heard this before and before, this technical assistance, we are here to help. And I'm so glad to hear from Cass and Mike about, our staff at OCR, and that we are responsive. We actually pick up the phone. We actually respond to emails, and it's, it is in our best interest to help you succeed and guide you and direct you and put you on the right path. Again, at the end of the day, Cass knows, I think Mike knows too, there's been instances where things have gone south, but there's always a path back to correct it. I think you talked about the monitoring, nobody wants a finding. It's not the end of it's not the end of the world. If you get a finding is what we call a curable deficiency. As long as we can fix it, we're gonna be okay. It's when a couple of instances where we can't fix it, that's when it's like, we got trouble. And that's where it's like, you gotta get your checkbook out because we gotta take some money back. Again, this is, again, part of the job. This is what I like. And it's, at the end of the, it's not something, it's not tactile that you can, put your finger on. It's just that there's an appreciation and there's real results that you see. It's the impact that you're having in your local community, making it, successful. Again, the project we did with, Snowbelt is a classic example. It's, hearing the success stories with the Microenterprise programs. And fixing the water systems, fixing the sewer systems, it's all part of it. It's like, that's what this is all about. And it's not just to spend money. It's not just because the money's there. It's because we're showing real results and again, long-term community development. All right. How are we doing on time? Sweet.
Charlie, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
And maybe it's for EFC, but we had touched on the.
We had touched on the DEC/EFC funding for septic, the septic replacement program, which Lewis County also oversees, or our office also oversees for Lewis County. I think Mike oversees it for Jefferson County. It's quite the bowl. There's no administrative kickbacks to the planning department to advertise for it, to notify for it. Is that something that we could work with you all on for direct mailers to our, we have a list of all of the properties that comply with the program requirements, but I think, I don't know how many of our constituents would love, I replace my septic signs in their front lawn, but I'm guessing I'll be surprised. I'm just thinking if we could reach out to you for help to get that word out, then maybe we can work on coupling that with some CDBG funding for those households that maybe can't make it work with the other 50%.
Right.
But I hadn't thought about reaching out to you all for the, the outreach portion of that, but that could be tremendously beneficial to my office. And I'm sure, I don't know if Mike has spent any of his county funds on outreach, but I know it takes a lot of, we probably budget about $1,000 a year for that stuff. So, to do mailers and outreach.
With the awards that we make, you can use part of it. So it's the program delivery, it's what we call the cost of getting the money on the street. You can use that. There's no, your admin money you can use for stuff like that. The program delivery, again, is tied to the LOMAD benefit. But yeah, definitely with that stuff, any of that public outreach effort, once you get the award, you can use some of your admin money for that.
Yeah. And up until that point, until we apply for the CDBG, maybe to couple it with just the DEC funding would be really great to work with the EFC on.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a great advertising for us. That is exactly something that we would work on. We've done that with several communities, just different, even outreach events and materials to help get folks to come to a town meeting to learn about the project. We have at least 4 designers on staff, so we are well equipped for that.
So effective project management strategies. I actually asked our staff to give me, it's like, if you had to tell one of your projects, best case scenario, what's something to do for your projects. This is, some of the comments they came up with, and I think it's pretty good words of advice, pearls of wisdom. Again, open communication, you have to talk to us. We have to know what's going on. If there's problems that are starting to precipitate, there's probably a way to fix it. So again, I can't stress that enough. Pick up the phone or just email us, but communicate and I think this was Haley, communicate early and often. Again, reach out with questions. Again, tell my communities, keep the conversation open. Stay in touch. Once you're funded, you're going to hear from your project manager once a month. It's not that we don't trust you. It's not that we're trying to be pesky. It's like, this is our way of doing our due diligence of keeping you on schedule. You've got a project schedule. There's expenditure rates that you need to meet. And when things start to fall behind, this is how we can catch things again through that effective communication. And my example with the town of Newfane with John Syracuse, He was perfect because he did everything I need somebody to do. He didn't stick his head in the sand. As soon as the project, and again, with the prior supervisor passing away and then the adjacent community pulling out of the project, first thing he did before he did anything, is picked up the phone and goes, what do I do? He said, we got to solve this. So again, don't be afraid of any issues. Trust me, after 25 years, there isn't too much I haven't seen at this point. And again, if we're asking for information, it's because we need due diligence. There's reporting that we have to provide to HUD. Maybe there's a little extra stuff that we need to pull out to get on board and address our concerns. There's reporting that we send up internally within HCR to the Housing Trust Fund Board. And there's also, you're going to see for the awardees that are coming out this year, there's also the publicity that we're going to be looking for. So we're going to be looking for you to make sure you're plugging us in your promotional material locally, but then also kind of this media strategy so that when you have public events, public groundbreaking ceremonies, that you're including us in all of that, because I don't want to brag, but it's like you're there because we're here. So it kind of goes both ways. We want to know and participate, and we also want to use that as a learning curve for other communities, for other projects, to show like this is what you can do in leading by example. So again, pitfalls. This is kind of the what not to do. You don't go through the procurement process. You don't follow the proper procurement process. I know, Cass, you mentioned the bidding and it was a little less than 3 weeks. Not the end of the world. Again, the ideal is, 3 weeks for bidding. Again, just not following the general procurement guidelines. Little things like the environmental review. I know it's a huge document. This is more than just filling out paperwork. There's meat and substance behind the NEPA process, and it's understanding that compliance, the regulatory standards, the categorizing your project under the correct NEPA category. And again, it's not understanding the environmental. It's if you've got questions on this, you guys have seen, I'm sure, so much of this, but it's not just, don't just fill in the blank. Don't just say it doesn't apply. It's, if it doesn't apply, you need to tell me why it doesn't apply. Reporting is big. So we have your annual performance report. So those are due in January of every year. Or if your project happens to end early and you're done mid-year, we're going to look for that final APR within 30 days of your final expenditure. But there's other reporting throughout the year. There's FIHO with the MWBE and Section 3 reporting. There's Davis-Bacon reporting. There's the audit stuff that we talked about. These are all requirements. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but this is stuff. It's not that bad, but this is stuff that comes with the territory. And there's a reason for any of the reporting that we ask for. Even again, is, if the response is you've expended $0 at that point of your project, there's still the expectation there's been some accomplishments, there's been some movement on the project. So just, not doing your reporting on a regular basis will get you your funds suspended. So we'll get into Q&A. Just kind of some key takeaways that I would hope that everybody key takeaway. Again, plan the project strategically, and it's develop it. So in your bags that we had, there's flyers on all of our activities, and this is one of the things. It's like plan your project. And I said this before in my earlier session. Just because there's funding doesn't mean that you're necessarily should be applying. And it's like a few of you, maybe online or in the room, have come to me and said, we want to apply, and I'll get the full background, the history of the story. It's like, you're not ready. And it's not that I don't want to deal with you. It's like, I don't want you to waste the time this year because you're really not ready to apply for that project. You're too far away from that goal. But maintaining compliance is a big thing. These are all federal regulations. There's stuff that we have absolutely no wiggle room on. Again, we talked about the monitoring. If it's a curable deficiency, maybe something like Cass said, they didn't hit the proper procurement for the 3 weeks. It's not that big of a deal. It happens. But we usually, in the monitoring report, you'll acknowledge that, for future projects, you won't do it again. And again, we're looking for sustainability. We're looking for impact. This is not just a Band-Aid approach. It's not a quick fix. This is why, like with the housing rehab, we want to see that comprehensive approach to rehab. We want to participate in these big infrastructure projects because there's sustainable impact. We're looking for stuff to last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And this is all stuff to keep in mind as you're going through that planning process for yourself. So on our eligible communities list, again, this is all broken up by region. But if you click on the eligible communities, so go to our website, and there's the program guidelines. That's where this is. And you'll click on the eligible communities list. It'll give you by county. There's an alphabetical list of all the municipalities. It'll tell you if you're eligible for state CDBG. And then adjacent to that, there's another list that we put out there with all the municipalities that are above that 51% magic threshold of 51% lower moderate income. So that is out there by county. It's a great resource. As long as you're on that list, you're eligible. So I was talking to somebody. I was at the Adirondack Park Agency, the planning forum last week, and somebody said they're not eligible for funding. I was like, well, where are you? And they said they live in, the project was in Essex County. I said, you're eligible. They're like, no, we're not. I said, you're eligible to apply. The project may not be something that we can touch, but if you're on that list, you are an eligible entity. You can apply for the funding. Then we have to look at the project itself. We talked about the national objective. Can you meet the national objective? So if you're eligible community, you can meet the national objective. There's a path forward for us to move you through the application process and to get to funding. Oh, did you have 5 minutes? Oh, 5 minutes. Okay. This is another great tool. This is the LMI data tool. So again, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll just plug in Village of Boonville, and it'll come up with the demographics, and it'll tell you at that point if you're 51% lower moderate income or not. It breaks it down for you by census tract. So that is a fantastic tool to have. Again, time for your questions. I don't know if we have any online. No? Okay. Anybody in the room? Questions? Oh, tough crowd.
You were just that thorough and that good.
Good. So when you get the PDF that we will distribute, I just want to go through and make some edits to the notes first before we distribute these. These are actually hyperlinks. So when you get the PDF, you'll be able to actually click on each of these and go directly to any of these entities for their websites. There's my contact. There's our info. There's Justice's info. You can always submit the question to OCR info, and that's not just for CDBG. So that's any program under OCR. Just if you've got a question for whatever it is, whether it's CDBG or anybody else, just put in the subject line what the program is that you're inquiring about. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for listening to us for 4 hours. Thanks.
All right, so for our virtual attendees, just a reminder that you will receive a link to a recording of today's presentation, as well as a document containing the slides. That will take about a week to render. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions in the meantime. Thanks for joining us today.
Get flags. You can get